They called him a fool when he dragged that rusted wreck home for $100. His neighbor, the polished CEO in her designer heels, laughed right in front of his kid. But while everyone saw trash, Caleb Rowan saw something they couldn't. Lines too perfect, curves too deliberate. That pile of corroded metal hiding in plain sight would soon shake an entire community, humble the woman who mocked him, and prove that sometimes the greatest treasures are the ones everyone else walks past. This is the story of the $100 car that changed everything. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The tow truck driver didn't bother hiding his smirk as he unloaded the car onto Caleb's driveway. It wasn't really a car anymore, more like the skeleton of one, wrapped in rust and despair. The wheels barely turned. The hood was a patchwork of corrosion. Where paint should have been, there was only oxidized metal the color of dried blood. "You sure about this, buddy?" the driver asked, unhooking the chains with practiced efficiency. "Salvage yard's got a crusher. Could have saved yourself the tow fee." Caleb handed him 320s and didn't answer. He'd heard enough opinions for one day. The driver shrugged, pocketed the cash, and drove off, leaving Caleb alone with his purchase and the growing audience of neighbors pretending not to stare from their porches. Finn appeared at his elbow, all of 7 years old, eyes wide behind glasses that kept sliding down his nose. "Dad, it's really ugly." "Yeah, buddy, it is." "Why'd you buy it?" Caleb crouched down, wiping his hands on jeans already stained with who knows what from the salvage yard. "Because sometimes things aren't what they look like on the outside. You remember that book we read? The one about the old horse? The one that won the race?" "Exactly." Finn pushed his glasses up and walked slowly around the car, his small hand trailing along the driver's side door. "Does it have a name?" "Not yet. Want to help me figure one out?" Before Finn could answer, heels clicked against concrete. Caleb didn't need to look up to know who it was. Avery Sloane had a particular way of walking, confident, purposeful, the kind of stride that announced her presence before she opened her mouth. "Caleb." Her voice carried that practiced professional warmth that didn't quite reach genuine. "That's quite a project you've got there." He stood, resisting the urge to wipe his hands on his jeans again. Avery was in full work mode, tailored navy blazer, cream blouse, pants that probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget. She'd been his neighbor for 2 years, ever since she'd bought the renovated Victorian 3 houses down. They'd exchanged pleasantries at neighborhood barbecues, nodded in passing, nothing more. "Just something to work on," Caleb said. She walked closer, her nose wrinkling slightly as she took in the full scope of the wreck. "You paid money for this?" $100. 100? She stopped herself, glanced at Finn, then back at Caleb with something that might have been pity. "Well, everyone needs a hobby, I suppose." "It's going to be really cool when we fix it," Finn piped up, his voice carrying that absolute certainty only children possess. Avery's smile tightened. "I'm sure it will be, sweetheart." She turned back to Caleb. "You know, the neighborhood association has regulations about inoperable vehicles being visible from the street. Just something to keep in mind." "It won't be here long," Caleb said, keeping his voice even. "I'll have it in the garage tonight." "Of course." She checked her watch. Expensive, minimal, probably Swiss. "I've got a call in 10. Good luck with your project." She walked away, heels clicking, already pulling out her phone. Caleb watched her go, jaw tight. It wasn't the first time someone had looked at him like he'd made a stupid decision. Probably wouldn't be the last. "I don't think she believes in us," Finn said quietly. "That's okay. We believe in us, right?" Finn nodded, but his shoulders had hunched slightly, the way they did when kids at school said things about not having a mom. Caleb felt that familiar surge of protective anger, the kind that made him want to prove everyone wrong just to wipe that look off his son's face. "Come on," he said, ruffling Finn's hair. "Let's get this thing into the garage before it becomes a neighborhood scandal." Getting the car into the garage was easier said than done. The wheels turned, but barely. The steering was locked. Caleb had to physically push while Finn steered from inside, even though the wheel didn't actually move. It took 20 minutes and left Caleb sweating through his shirt. But eventually, the car sat inside the garage, hidden from judgmental eyes. He hit the button to close the garage door and stood there for a moment, hands on his hips, catching his breath. The car looked worse under the fluorescent work lights, every flaw magnified, every imperfection highlighted. "Dad?" Yeah, buddy. What if Miss Sloane is right? What if it's just junk? Caleb pulled 2 bottles of water from the mini fridge he kept out here and handed one to Finn. You want the truth? Finn nodded. I don't know if it's junk or not, but here's what I do know. I've been working on cars since I was younger than you. And when I looked at this thing at the salvage yard, I saw something weird. What kind of weird? The body lines, the curves. They're too precise, too intentional. He ran his hand along the roofline, feeling the contours beneath the rust. Cars from junkyards, they're usually banged up, dented, warped. This one? The frame is straight. The proportions are right. Someone built this car carefully. So it's special. Maybe. Or maybe I'm seeing patterns that aren't there. Either way, we're going to find out. Finn grinned, and that was enough. That was always enough. After Finn went to bed that night, Caleb returned to the garage with a toolbox, a 6-pack of beer he wouldn't finish, and a portable speaker playing the classic rock station. This was his time, the hours between 9 p.m. and midnight when the world got quiet and he could work with his hands and not think about everything else. He started with the hood, trying to pop it open. The release was rusted solid. It took 10 minutes with penetrating oil and a pry bar before it finally gave with a screech that probably woke the neighbors. Caleb didn't care. The engine bay was a disaster, rust, grime, evidence of mice having made a home at some point. But as he cleaned away decades of neglect with degreaser and rags, something emerged that made him stop. The engine mounts were custom, not factory, not aftermarket either. These were hand-fabricated, welded with precision that spoke of someone who knew exactly what they were doing. The exhaust manifold had been modified, port-matched by someone with serious skills. And there, on the underside of the hood, barely visible beneath the corrosion, was a series of numbers and letters stamped into the metal. Caleb grabbed his phone and a wire brush, carefully cleaning the area until he could read it clearly. P-71/E003. He photographed it, then kept cleaning. The more he uncovered, the stranger it got. This wasn't a standard production car. The welds were too good. The modifications too integrated. Someone had built this car from the ground up with a specific purpose in mind. By midnight, he had made his way under the car, rolling beneath it on a creeper with a work light. The chassis was solid, remarkably so for something this old. And there, on the driver's side frame rail, he found it. A stamp. Small, deliberate, hammered into the metal. J. Mercer, 1974. Caleb's heart kicked up. J. Mercer. The name tugged at something in the back of his mind, a memory from years ago, from car magazines his father used to keep in the garage when Caleb was a kid. He rolled out from under the car and pulled up Google on his phone, fingers moving quickly despite the grease. J. Mercer Racing Engineer 1974. The results loaded and Caleb felt his pulse quicken. Jonas Mercer, designer and engineer for the Horizon Racing Team. Known for building experimental endurance racing prototypes in the early 1970s. Most of his designs had been destroyed or lost to history. There were rumors of a series of cars, the P-71 series, that had been built for a canceled endurance racing program. Only 3 had allegedly been completed before the program folded and the team dissolved. No one knew what had happened to the cars. Caleb looked at the rusted coupe sitting in his garage, then back at his phone. No way, he muttered. No possible way. But the stamp didn't lie. And neither did the craftsmanship. This wasn't some backyard project. This was something significant, something built by someone who knew what they were doing. He spent the next hour photographing everything. The engine bay, the chassis, the stamp, the custom parts. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He logged into an old account on vintageracingforum.com, a site he used to frequent back when he had time for hobbies beyond survival. His username was still there. Caleb Rowan _restored. He created a new thread. Subject: Help IDing a mysterious 70s coupe. Jonas Mercer. Connection? He uploaded the photos and wrote, bought this for $100 at a salvage yard. Found custom racing modifications and a stamp. J. Mercer, 1974, on the chassis. Also found P-71/E003 under the hood. Body lines are too precise for a kit car or backyard build. Anyone know what this might be? He hit post, closed his laptop, and headed inside. It was nearly 1 a.m. He had to be up at 6 for work. Sleep didn't come easy. His mind kept turning over the possibilities, the what-ifs. By the time his alarm went off, he'd managed maybe 4 hours of fitful rest. Finn was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with a bowl of cereal still in his pajamas. "Did you work on the car?" he asked through a mouthful of Cheerios. "A little. Found some interesting stuff." "Like what?" "Like evidence that someone very good at building cars made ours." Finn's eyes lit up. "So it is special?" "Maybe. We'll see." Caleb made coffee, got Finn ready for school, and dropped him off before heading to his job at Morrison Hardware. It was mindless work, stocking shelves, helping customers find the right screws and paint, but it paid the bills and let him pick Finn up from school at 3. His phone buzzed in his pocket around 10 a.m. He was helping an elderly woman find weather stripping when he felt it. Then it buzzed again, and again. During his break, he checked. 47 new notifications from the Vintage Racing Forum. His thread had exploded. The first comment was from a user named Vintage Pete. "Holy shit. If that's real, you might have just found one of the lost P71s. Do not restore it yet. Get it authenticated first." Another from Racing Historian. The P71/E designation matches Horizon's Endurance Prototype series. 3 were built. 2 were supposedly destroyed in testing. The third disappeared. If this is 003, you're holding a piece of racing history. And then, 3 comments down, one that made Caleb's coffee go cold. This is either the find of the decade or an elaborate fake. Those prototypes were worth serious money even back then. If authentic, in current market, we're talking 7 figures. Easy. 7 figures. Caleb read it again. 7 figures. His hands were shaking slightly as he scrolled through the rest of the comments. Most were skeptical but intrigued. A few called it a hoax, but several users who seemed to actually know what they were talking about were urging him to contact specific collectors, specific museums, specific authenticators. One message was a private DM from a user named Horizon_archivist. "I've been researching the Horizon racing team for 20 years. If you really have P71/E003, I need to see it. Where are you located? I can be there within 48 hours. Caleb stared at his phone until his break ended. Then he slipped it back into his pocket and returned to stocking shelves, his mind spinning. That evening, after picking up Finn and making dinner, spaghetti, the 3rd time this week, he sat his son down at the kitchen table. "Remember when I said the car might be special?" Finn nodded, twirling pasta around his fork. "It might be very special, like people are going to want to see it special." "Can we still fix it?" "Yeah, buddy, but we might need to be really careful about how we fix it." "Because it's old?" "Because it might be important, like museum important." Finn's fork paused halfway to his mouth. "A museum would want our car." "Maybe. I don't know yet." "That would be so cool." Caleb smiled despite the knot of anxiety in his stomach. "Yeah, it would be." His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Caleb Rowan?" A man's voice, older with a slight southern drawl. "Who's asking?" "My name is Richard Chen. I'm a collector and authenticator specializing in vintage racing vehicles. I saw your post on the forum. I'd like to make you an offer." "I haven't even confirmed what it is yet." "I know what it is. I've been looking for P71/E003 for 15 years. I'll give you $50,000 sight unseen right now. Cash." Caleb's grip tightened on the phone. $50,000. That would cover Finn's braces, the credit card debt, the medical bills still hanging over him from Sarah's cancer treatment 3 years ago. "I need to think about it," he said. $75,000. Final offer. But it expires in 24 hours. "I said I need to think about it." A pause, then, "You don't understand what you have. That car is dangerous to own if you can't protect it." "Is that a threat?" "It's a fact. The racing world is small. Word is already spreading. You've got collectors, museums, and less scrupulous individuals who will all want that car. Some won't be as polite as I am." "Thanks for the warning." Caleb hung up. Finn was staring at him. "Who was that?" "Someone who wants to buy the car." "Are you going to sell it?" Caleb looked at his son, at those wide eyes behind crooked glasses, at the hope written clearly across his face. "No," he said, "not yet. Not until we know what we really have." The next morning, Caleb called in sick to work. He didn't feel good about lying, but he needed time. He needed to understand what was happening before this spiraled completely out of his control. He spent the morning in the garage documenting everything with his phone camera, every angle, every detail, every stamp and modification. Then he called his oldest friend. Marcus Webb answered on the second ring. "Caleb, my man, it's been a minute. I need your eyes on something. This about that car you posted? I saw that thread. Half the forum thinks you're full of shit. Can you come over?" "When?" "Now." Marcus showed up 40 minutes later in his work van, Webb's automotive restoration emblazoned on the side. He was a decade older than Caleb, with graying temples and hands perpetually stained with grease. They'd worked together at a custom shop years ago, back before Finn was born, before Sarah got sick, before life got complicated. Caleb opened the garage door. Marcus walked in, took one look at the car, and whistled low. "Jesus Christ, Caleb. You see it? The body lines." "Yeah, I see it." Marcus circled the car slowly, his practiced eye catching details Caleb had missed. "This is hand-shaped. Look at the fender curves. That's not stamped metal. Someone beat this into shape." "Hand-shaped means what?" "Means this was a custom build, probably a race car. You don't hand-shape body panels for a street car. It's too expensive, too time-consuming." He crouched by the front wheel. "These mounting points have been reinforced. This thing was built to take serious cornering forces." "What do you think it's worth?" Marcus stood, wiping his hands on his work pants. "Honestly, if it's what I think it is, more than your house. Maybe more than your house and my house combined. That's what I'm afraid of." "You get any weird calls yet?" "One. Collector offered 75 grand sight unseen. Don't take it. Wasn't planning to." Marcus pulled out his own phone, snapping photos. "You mind if I send these to a guy I know? He works with the Automotive History Museum up north, specializes in authentication." "What's his name?" "Tom Richter." "Good guy. Honest. If anyone can tell you what you really have, it's him." Caleb nodded. "Do it." While Marcus made calls, Caleb went back to the forum. The thread had grown to over 200 replies. Most were spectators, rubbernecking at the possibility of a major find. But several comments stood out. From Classic Racing Doc, "I've authenticated several Horizon Racing pieces over the years. The P71 series was Jonas Mercer's masterwork. He disappeared from racing shortly after the program collapsed. Rumor was he had a breakdown after one of the test drivers died during a trial run. The remaining cars were supposed to be destroyed per the team owner's orders. If one survived, it would be the only complete P71 in existence." From Metal Memories, "My grandfather worked for Horizon as a fabricator. He always said Mercer was a genius who was ahead of his time. The P71s were supposed to revolutionize endurance racing. Then everything fell apart. Grandpa said someone smuggled at least one of the cars out before they could be scrapped. Never knew if it was true until maybe now." And then, at the bottom of the thread, a comment that made Caleb's blood run cold. "Be careful who you trust. The racing world has a long memory and short ethics. People have killed for less." The username was anonymous_1974. Caleb screenshotted it. Marcus came back into the garage, phone still pressed to his ear. "Yeah, Tom, he's right here." He held out the phone. "He wants to talk to you." Caleb took it. "Hello? Mr. Rowan?" The voice was crisp, professional. "Tom Richter. Marcus showed me your photos. I need to see that car in person." "When?" "I'm 3 hours away. I can be there by 6 tonight if that works." Caleb glanced at his watch. It was just past 2. "Yeah, that works. Don't let anyone else see it. Don't clean it any further. Don't touch anything. What you have is evidence, and we need it preserved." "Evidence of what?" "Of a car that's been missing for 50 years. Tom Richter arrived at exactly 6:07 p.m. in a silver SUV loaded with equipment. He was younger than Caleb expected, maybe 45, fit, with the kind of focused energy that came from genuine passion for his work. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Show me." Caleb led him to the garage. Tom walked in, set down his equipment case, and stood absolutely still for a long moment, just staring. My God, he said quietly. It's real. You're sure? I won't be completely sure until I run tests, but he moved closer, pulling out a small flashlight and examining the chassis. The fabrication techniques match Mercer's documented work. The proportions are correct. And this stamp, he illuminated the J. Mercer marking. This is his signature style. He stamped every major piece he built. Tom spent the next 3 hours documenting everything. He took paint samples, metal scrapings, detailed photographs with specialized equipment. He measured tolerances, checked welds, examined every custom part. Caleb and Marcus watched from the doorway, not wanting to interfere. Finally, Tom stood, peeling off latex gloves. This is P71/E003. I'd bet my reputation on it. What does that mean? Caleb asked. It means you own one of the most significant pieces of American racing history. It means collectors around the world are going to want this car. Museums will want it. And unfortunately, it means you're about to have problems you didn't ask for. What kind of problems? Tom met his eyes. The kind where you need insurance, security, legal protection. This car is worth millions, Caleb. Potentially as much as $5 million in the right auction. The number hit like a physical blow. $5 million for a $100 salvage yard find. Marcus let out a low whistle. Holy shit. I can't protect that, Caleb said. I don't have security. I know people who can help, Tom interrupted. But first we need to get this documented officially. I need to write a full authentication report, and you need to decide what you want to do. What are my options? You can sell it privately, auction it, donate it to a museum for a tax write-off, or restore it yourself and keep it. And if I want to restore it, then you need a team, specialized fabricators, people who understand historical preservation. You'd be looking at $500,000 in restoration costs, minimum, and 2 years of work. Caleb's head was spinning. I need to think. Think fast. Word is spreading. Marcus and I will keep quiet, but someone on that forum is going to figure out where you are eventually. After Tom left, promising to send his preliminary report within 48 hours, Caleb sat alone in the garage, staring at the car. $5 million. He could pay off everything. Set up a college fund for Finn, buy a real house with a yard, stop working retail and actually breathe for the first time in years. But there was something else too. A weight he couldn't name. This car had a story. Someone had built it with purpose, with skill, with passion. Jonas Mercer had created something important, and then it had vanished into obscurity. Didn't it deserve better than being hidden in some private collection? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Congratulations on your find, we should talk. Elliot Graves, Graves Collection. Then another. Heard about the P71. Interested in discussing acquisition. Name your price. Pinnacle Automotive Museum. And another. Mr. Rowan, I represent a client willing to offer $3 million cash, immediate close. Please call. They were circling already. Caleb turned off his phone and went inside. Finn was asleep on the couch, pajamas on, glasses folded on the coffee table. Some cartoon was playing on mute. Caleb picked him up carefully. 7 was getting too big for this, but not quite yet, and carried him to bed. Finn stirred but didn't wake, just curled into his pillow with a soft sigh. We're going to be okay, buddy, Caleb whispered. Whatever happens, we're going to be okay. He left the door cracked and walked to his own bedroom. On the nightstand was a photo from 6 years ago. Sarah, healthy and smiling, holding infant Finn in the hospital. She'd been so proud, so certain they were going to build something good together. I think I found something, Sarah, he said to the photo. I don't know what to do with it yet, but I think maybe this is our chance. The next morning, Caleb woke to find his phone had 37 missed calls and over 100 new messages. The forum thread had been picked up by a vintage car blog, then a racing news site. Now it was spreading across social media. Someone had identified him. His name was out there. His address wasn't, not yet, but it was only a matter of time. He called Marcus in a panic. I know, Marcus said before Caleb could speak. I saw. Listen, Tom's guy can get you security, legitimate security, but you need to move fast. I don't have money for security. Tom says the museum he works with will front it as part of a potential acquisition discussion. They're interested in buying. Everyone's interested in buying. Yeah, but these guys are legitimate. They'd restore it, display it publicly, give Mercer credit. Isn't that what you wanted? Caleb didn't remember saying that out loud, but Marcus was right. That was exactly what he wanted. Set up a meeting, Caleb said. The security arrived that afternoon, two guys in a nondescript sedan who parked on the street and didn't introduce themselves. Just nodded at Caleb and took up positions where they could watch the house and garage. By evening, news vans had appeared at the end of the block. Caleb closed the blinds and tried to explain to Finn why they couldn't go outside. Is it because of this car? Finn asked. Yeah, buddy. Are people mad at us? No, they want something we have. The car? The car. Finn was quiet for a moment, processing. If the car is making problems, maybe we should sell it. Caleb crouched down to his son's eye level. Is that what you want? I don't want people to be mean to you. Hey, Caleb put his hands on Finn's shoulders. People have been mean before. We handled it. We'll handle this too. But I'm not selling that car unless you and I both agree it's the right thing to do. Deal? Finn nodded, but his eyes were worried. That night, Caleb stood at his bedroom window, watching the news vans and the security detail, and the neighbors who kept walking past to stare. 3 houses down, he could see lights on in Avery's Victorian. He wondered what she was thinking now. The next day brought the meeting Caleb had been dreading. Elliot Graves arrived in a car that probably cost more than Caleb had earned in the past 5 years. He was exactly what Caleb expected. Mid-60s, silver hair, custom suit, the kind of casual wealth that didn't need to announce itself. They met in Caleb's living room. Graves sat on the worn couch like he was doing it a favor, his eyes taking in the thrift store furniture and the crayon drawings on the walls. Mr. Rowan, he began, I'll be direct. I collect significant automotive history. The P-71 belongs in a proper collection, preserved and protected. I'm prepared to offer $4 million. Tom Richter said 5. Tom Richter doesn't have $4 million in cash to hand you today. Graves leaned forward. I can have funds transferred within 24 hours. You could walk away from all this attention, set your son up for life, and never worry about money again. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. What would you do with it? Caleb asked. I'd restore it to show condition and add it to my private collection. Private meaning no one sees it. Meaning it's properly cared for by professionals, not sitting in a garage collecting dust. Caleb felt his jaw tighten. It's not collecting dust. I'm taking care of it. With respect, you're a hardware store employee. You don't have the resources or expertise to handle something this significant. And there it was. The assumption. The dismissal. Caleb stood. I think we're done here. Graves didn't move. You're making a mistake. That car is a burden you're not equipped to carry. Maybe, but it's my burden. Thanks for coming by. Graves left, but not before handing Caleb a business card. When you realize I'm right, call me. The offer expires in 72 hours. After he was gone, Finn emerged from his bedroom where he'd been hiding. You didn't sell it, he said. Nope. Why? Because I didn't like him. Finn grinned. Me neither. He looked like a villain. Yeah, he kind of did. That evening, Caleb sat in the garage again, staring at the car. His phone buzzed constantly. Offers, threats disguised as warnings, collectors trying to negotiate. He ignored all of it. He was in over his head. He knew that. But something about this car, about this moment, felt like more than just money. It felt like proof that he could still recognize value when everyone else saw trash. That his instincts were worth something. That maybe, just maybe, he wasn't the fool everyone seemed to think he was. The garage door was opened slightly, letting in the evening air. He heard footsteps approaching and tensed, ready to tell another collector to leave. But it wasn't a collector. It was Avery. She stood at the edge of the garage, still in work clothes, her arms crossed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. I owe you an apology, she finally said. Caleb blinked. What? I mocked you. In front of your son. I assumed you'd made a stupid purchase without knowing anything about you or your judgment. She stepped closer. I was wrong. You didn't know. That's not an excuse. She looked at the car, really looked at it, in a way she hadn't before. I've spent the last 2 days reading about this car. about Jonas Mercer, about the Horizon Racing team. This is important. Yeah, it is. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. She nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I've dealt with collectors before. In my business, I see a lot of wealthy people trying to acquire things they want. Graves is known for being ruthless. If you turn him down, he won't take it well. Is that a warning? It's friendly advice from someone who should have been friendlier from the start. Caleb studied her. There was something different in her expression, genuine respect, maybe even a hint of admiration. Thank you, he said. She turned to leave, then paused. If you need anything, legal advice, security recommendations, someone to run interference with the media, let me know. I have resources. Why would you help me? Because I was a jerk to your kid. And because you found something amazing and deserve a fair shot at handling it properly. She smiled slightly. Also, it's kind of fun watching someone stick it to Elliot Graves. After she left, Caleb sat alone with the car and his thoughts. The security guards were outside. The news vans were still at the end of the block. The phone kept buzzing with messages he wouldn't read. But for the first time since this started, Caleb felt like maybe, just maybe, he wasn't completely alone in this. He reached out and touched the car's door handle, feeling the cold metal beneath his fingers. All right, he said quietly. Let's see where this goes. The morning after Avery's unexpected apology, Caleb woke to find frost on the windows and his phone dead from the constant barrage of notifications. He'd finally turned it off around 2 a.m., unable to handle another message from someone who wanted to tell him what to do with his own property. Finn was already awake, sitting at the kitchen table with his cereal, scrolling through something on the tablet they used for homework. Dad, you're famous. What? Finn turned the screen around. It was a YouTube video titled Hidden Racing Legend Found in Salvage Yard. Must see. $100 to $5 million. The thumbnail was a photo someone had taken of Caleb's garage from the street, zoomed in on the partially visible car. Where did you find this? It was in my recommended videos. There's like 10 of them now. Caleb took the tablet and scrolled. Finn was right. Multiple channels had picked up the story, each with their own speculation, dramatic narration, and thumbnail designs screaming for clicks. Some had accurate information. Others were completely making things up. One claimed the car had belonged to a dead race car driver and was cursed. Another insisted it was worth $10 million and Caleb was being lowballed. A third suggested the whole thing was an elaborate hoax for internet attention. This is insane, Caleb muttered. Jason at school said his dad thinks you should sell it and buy a new house. Jason's dad doesn't know what he's talking about. That's what I said. Caleb handed back the tablet. You defending me at school? Always. That word hit harder than it should have. Finn had been defending him for years, against the kids who made fun of their old car, their small apartment, the fact that Finn's clothes came from Target, while theirs came from somewhere with a name Caleb couldn't pronounce. Now his 7-year-old was defending his decisions about $1 million car. You shouldn't have to do that, buddy. Finn shrugged, shoving another spoonful of cereal into his mouth. I don't mind. You make good choices. Not everyone thinks so. Ms. Sloan does now. Caleb couldn't argue with that. He dropped Finn at school, ignoring the stares from other parents who'd clearly seen the news, and headed home to find Marcus's van already in the driveway. Marcus was leaning against it, drinking coffee from a travel mug, watching the security guards watch the house. This is wild, man, Marcus said as Caleb approached. You got armed guards now? They're not armed, I think. You should check. They went into the garage together. The car sat exactly where it had been, but somehow it looked different now that Caleb knew what it was. The rust was still there, the damage still visible, but underneath all that decay was something deliberate, something crafted with purpose. Marcus walked around it slowly, the way he always did when examining a project. Tom called me this morning. His full authentication report is done. And it's definitely P71/E003. No question. He found manufacturing codes that match Horizon Racing's documentation, found evidence of the original paint under the rust, a color called shadow blue that Mercer specifically mixed for the endurance program, even found some of the original interior fabric trapped in the seat frame. So it's real. It's real. which means you've got a decision to make. Caleb sat on his work stool, suddenly exhausted despite the day barely starting. Everyone keeps saying that. But what decision? Sell it to someone who will hide it away? Donate it and get nothing? Try to restore it myself and go bankrupt? There's option 4, which is find the right buyer. Someone who will restore it properly and display it publicly. Someone who will give Mercer credit and make sure people know the story. You mean like a museum? Yeah, but not just any museum, the right one. Caleb's phone, which he'd reluctantly turned back on, buzzed. Tom Richter's name appeared on the screen. Speak of the devil, Caleb said, answering. Tom. Caleb, good. Listen, I talked to the director at Westbridge Automotive Museum. They're very interested. They want to make an offer. Everyone wants to make an offer. This one's different. They're not looking to hide it in storage. They want to make it the centerpiece of a new American racing history wing. Full restoration, public display, educational programming built around it. And they want to credit Jonas Mercer properly, maybe even track down his family if any are still alive. That caught Caleb's attention. They'd credit him? It would be the focal point of the display. His story, his engineering, his legacy. This car would finally get the recognition it deserved. What's the offer? They're prepared to go to $4.5 million, plus they'd name you as the discoverer in all the exhibition materials. Your son too, if you want. Caleb looked at the car. $4.5 million. Finn's entire future secured, his own future secured. Sarah's medical debts finally paid off 3 years after her death. Can I think about it? Of course, but Caleb, this is a good offer from good people. I've worked with Westbridge for years. They'll do right by this car. After he hung up, Marcus was watching him. You gonna take it? Marcus asked. I don't know. Maybe. Probably. But I keep thinking about Jonas Mercer, about how he built this thing and then it just disappeared, about how no one remembers his work. If I sell it, even to a museum, I lose control of the story. You'd still be part of it. As a footnote, the guy who found it, not the guy who saved it. Marcus set down his coffee. You want to restore it yourself. I don't have $500,000. No, but you've got something better. You've got the car. And people want access to it. You could leverage that. How? Sponsorships, partnerships. Find a restoration shop that wants the publicity. Find parts suppliers who want their name attached to the project. Document the whole thing. Build a following. Make it a story people invest in. Then when it's done, you decide what happens to it. It was ambitious. Probably too ambitious. Caleb had never managed a project bigger than replacing an engine in his driveway. This would be coordinating multiple people, handling contracts, managing expectations, all while working full-time and raising a kid alone. But the idea had teeth. It felt right in a way the other options didn't. That would take years, Caleb said. Yeah, probably 2 minimum. I'd need help. I'm in. And I know people who'd kill for a chance to work on something like this. Before Caleb could respond, his phone rang again. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Mr. Rowan? A woman's voice, older, refined. My name is Helen Mercer. I'm Jonas Mercer's daughter. Caleb nearly dropped the phone. Marcus's eyes went wide. I'm sorry, what? My father built that car you found. I've been following the news coverage. I needed to speak with you directly. Yeah, of course. I'm listening. My father died 12 years ago, Alzheimer's. By the end, he barely remembered his own name, let alone the cars he'd built. But before he got really bad, he used to talk about the P-71s, about how they were his best work, and how it killed him that they'd been destroyed. Caleb's throat tightened. They weren't all destroyed. I know that now, but he died thinking they were, thinking his legacy had been erased. Her voice wavered slightly. Mr. Rowan, I don't care what you do with that car. Sell it, restore it, donate it. But please, whatever you do, make sure people know my father built it. Make sure his name is attached to it. That's all I want. I will. I promise. Thank you. A pause. May I ask how you found it? Salvage yard. I was looking for a project car, saw it sitting in the back lot covered in rust. Something about it just looked wrong, too precise, too intentional. So I took a chance. My father would have liked that. He always said the best engineers could see potential where others saw scrap. They talked for another 10 minutes. Helen told him about her father, about his brilliance, his obsession with perfection, his devastating disappointment when the Horizon program collapsed. She told him about the test driver who died, about how Jonas had blamed himself even though it wasn't his fault, about how he'd never really recovered. When they finally hung up, Caleb sat in silence. Marcus waited. "I can't sell it," Caleb finally said. "I figured. I have to restore it. Properly. And I have to make sure people know who Jonas Mercer was. So we're doing this?" "We're doing this." Marcus grinned. "All right then. Let's build something worth remembering." The next week moved fast. Too fast. Caleb called Tom Richter and declined Westbridge's offer, which went about as well as expected. Tom was understanding but warned him that turning down $4.5 million was the kind of decision that could haunt him. Caleb knew. He still did it. Then came the hard part, figuring out how to actually make this work. Marcus brought in contacts from the restoration world. They sat around Caleb's kitchen table with notebooks and laptops, sketching out a plan that seemed increasingly impossible the more they talked. There was Ray Chen, a fabricator in his 60s who'd worked on vintage race cars for 40 years. He took one look at the photos and said he was in. No payment necessary until the car was done. There was Lisa Park, a paint specialist who'd restored museum pieces and knew the chemical composition of every automotive paint manufactured before 1980. She wanted access to document the original Shadow Blue for a research paper she was writing. There was Dominic Torres, an engine builder who'd rebuilt everything from Model Ts to modern supercars. He took one look at the custom engine modifications and called them art. One by one, people signed on, not because of money, but because of the car itself. Because working on a lost Jonas Mercer prototype was the kind of opportunity that came once in a career, if ever. But they still needed funding, parts, tools, shop space, insurance. Even with people working at cost or for deferred payment, they were looking at $200,000 minimum. Caleb had about $3,000 in savings. That's when Marcus suggested something that made Caleb's stomach turn. "We crowdfund it." "Absolutely not. Hear me out. People are already following this story. They want updates. They want to be part of it. We document the restoration, share the process, let them contribute and feel invested. In return, they get to watch something historic come back to life." "I'm not begging strangers for money." "It's not begging, it's offering them a chance to participate in something meaningful. Plus, the publicity helps protect you. The more public this is, the harder it is for someone like Graves to mess with you." Caleb hated that it made sense. They launched the campaign 3 days later. Marcus handled most of it, filming a video explaining the project, setting up the page, creating reward tiers. Caleb sat stiffly in front of the camera and tried to explain why this mattered without sounding like he was selling something. "This car represents something important," he said, reading off notes Marcus had written. "It's a piece of racing history that deserves to be preserved. But more than that, it's a reminder that good work doesn't disappear just because people forget about it. Jonas Mercer built something incredible, and I want to make sure people remember that." It felt awkward and rehearsed, but Marcus insisted it was perfect. They set the goal at $150,000, figuring they'd supplement with deferred payments and scrounging. The campaign went live on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, they'd raised $30,000. By Wednesday, $60,000. By Friday, they'd hit the full goal and kept climbing. People weren't just donating money. They were sending messages, sharing stories, posting their own photos of project cars and forgotten treasures they'd found. The comments section became a community of people who understood what it meant to see value in something everyone else had written off. One comment stuck with Caleb. "My dad was a mechanic who always said the best finds were the ones nobody else wanted. He died last year. This project makes me feel like his philosophy lives on. Thank you for doing this." Another. "I'm a single mom with 3 kids. I can't afford much, but I'm sending $20 because I want my daughters to see that determination matters more than money." By the end of the first week, they'd raised $220,000. Caleb sat at his kitchen table, staring at the number on the screen, unable to process it. 200,000 people didn't give us this," Marcus said, looking over his shoulder. 200,000 people believe in this. That's the difference." The phone rang. Caleb was almost afraid to answer it. It was Elliot Graves. "You made a mistake," Graves said without preamble. "Good to hear from you, too." "I'm serious, Rowan. You're in over your head. This crowdfunding stunt is embarrassing. Take my offer before you humiliate yourself. Your offer expired. I'm extending it. 3.5 million. Right now. Before this circus gets worse. Not interested. You're going to fail. You don't have the expertise, the connections, or the discipline to pull this off. And when you do fail, that car is going to end up in a scrap heap where it belongs. Caleb felt his temper spike. Is there a point to this call? The point is that I'm giving you one last chance to be smart. Walk away with enough money to change your life. Or keep playing restorer and end up with nothing. Thanks for the advice. He hung up. Marcus raised his eyebrows. Graves? Yeah. He's scared. Of what? Of you actually pulling this off. Because if you do, it proves that regular people can accomplish something meaningful without needing his money or approval. Guys like Graves hate that. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what Graves had said, about being in over his head, about failing. He wasn't wrong. Caleb had never done anything like this. He'd restored cars, sure, but never something this significant. Never something where the whole world was watching. What if he screwed it up? What if he damaged the car beyond repair? What if he let down all those people who donated their money and their faith? He got up and walked to the garage. The security guards were still out front. They'd be there for another week until the media attention died down. Caleb slipped past them and stood in the darkness, looking at the shadowy outline of the car. Don't make me regret this, he said quietly. The car predictably didn't answer. But standing there in the silence, Caleb felt something settle in his chest. This was the right choice. Hard, maybe impossible, but right. He'd figure it out. He had to. The next morning, Avery knocked on his door holding 2 cups of coffee. Peace offering, she said. And also, I want to help. Caleb took the coffee. Help how? I run a tech company. I know about project management, about coordinating teams, about handling logistics. You're about to manage a complex restoration with multiple contractors, public scrutiny, and financial pressure. That's basically my job description, minus the cars. I can't afford to hire you. I'm not asking for payment. I'm offering to volunteer. Think of it as community service for being a judgmental ass when you first bought the car. Despite everything, Caleb smiled. You don't owe me this. Maybe not, but I want to be part of it anyway. Plus, Finn thinks I'm cool now because I believed in you guys. I'd like to keep that status. He said that yesterday at the bus stop. He told another kid that Ms. Sloan says his dad is smart and everyone who doubted him was wrong. Caleb's throat tightened. Okay. Yeah, we could use the help. Avery's smile was genuine. Good. Because I already created a project management system for tracking the restoration phases, contractor schedules, and budget allocation. Want to see? She pulled out her phone, showing him a detailed spreadsheet that made his head spin. This is way more organized than anything Marcus and I came up with. That's because you're car people. I'm a systems person. Together we might actually pull this off. Over the next few days, things began to take shape. Ray Chen secured shop space at a restoration facility he'd worked with for years. They were willing to donate the space in exchange for publicity and the right to showcase the restoration to clients. Lisa Parks started researching paint suppliers who could recreate Shadow Blue from the samples she'd analyzed. Dominic Torres began sourcing parts, calling in favors from contacts around the country who might have period-correct components or the ability to fabricate them. And Avery built a system to track everything, sending Caleb daily updates that kept him from drowning in the chaos. The car itself was transported to Ray's shop under cover of darkness, escorted by security that made the whole thing feel like a heist movie. Caleb followed in his own car, refusing to let the P-71 out of his sight. When they finally had it inside the shop, under proper lighting, Ray stood back and whistled. Okay, now I can really see what we're working with. He spent an hour examining every inch, taking notes, occasionally shaking his head in what looked like admiration. Mercer was a genius, Ray finally said. Look at these welds. Look at this frame construction. This isn't just engineering. This is sculpture. Can we restore it? We can. But we need to be smart. This isn't about making it perfect. It's about preserving what's here while bringing it back to function. We strip away the damage, but we keep the soul. How long? 18 months if everything goes right. 2 years if we hit complications. Which we will. Caleb nodded. He'd expected that. They started documenting everything immediately. Marcus set up cameras to record the process. Every part removed, every discovery made, every challenge encountered, all of it captured for the people who'd made this possible. The first major discovery came 2 days into the teardown. Ray was removing the dashboard when he found it, a small metal plate tucked behind the instrument cluster. It was engraved with a message. To whoever finds this, you're holding my best work. Don't waste it. JM. Ray called Caleb over. They stood there staring at it, this message from a man 50 years gone, speaking directly to them across time. He knew, Caleb said softly. He knew someone would find it eventually. Or he hoped, Ray said. Sometimes hope is enough. They removed the plate carefully and set it aside. Later it would be displayed alongside the car, a piece of the story that deserved to be told. As the teardown continued, more pieces of Jonas Mercer's work revealed themselves. Custom fabricated brackets that showed evidence of hand filing for perfect fit, welds that were stronger and cleaner than anything modern equipment could produce, design choices that were decades ahead of their time. But there was damage too. Corrosion that went deeper than they'd hoped, a cracked frame rail that would need careful repair, evidence that the car had seen hard use before being abandoned, scars from racing, from pushing limits, from doing exactly what it was built to do. Good, Ray said when they found a particularly nasty impact point on the rear quarter panel. This car has a history. It lived. That's worth preserving too. The media attention hadn't died down completely, but it had shifted. Now, instead of speculation about the car's value, people were following the restoration. YouTube channels broke down each update. Forums debated the proper way to handle specific repairs. Vintage racing experts chimed in with advice and encouragement. Helen Mercer called regularly, wanting to know every detail. Caleb would sit in his truck during lunch breaks and describe the day's discoveries. The way her father had reinforced the suspension points, the custom fuel system he'd designed, the evidence of his meticulous attention to every component. He'd be so happy, she said during one call, knowing someone cared enough to do this right. I'm trying, but every day we find something new that makes me realize how far I am from understanding what he built. That's the point, though. You're learning. You're seeing his work the way he saw it, as something worth studying, worth understanding. That's the greatest tribute you could give him. About 6 weeks into the restoration, Caleb was at the shop late one night when someone knocked on the bay door. Ray was gone. Dominic had left an hour ago. Caleb was alone, working on cataloging parts under the harsh LED work lights. He opened the door cautiously. A man stood there, maybe 70, with a weathered face and calloused hands. He held a worn photo. You Caleb Rowan? Yeah. I'm Michael Patterson. I was a fabricator for Horizon Racing, worked under Jonas Mercer for 3 years. He held up the photo. It showed a younger version of himself standing next to a sleek blue race car. That's P71/E002. I helped build it. Heard you found 003. Caleb stepped aside. Want to see it? Michael walked in slowly, his eyes scanning the shop until they landed on the partially disassembled car. He stopped, stood perfectly still, and Caleb saw his jaw tighten. My God, it survived. You thought they were all destroyed? That's what we were told after the accident. After Tommy died testing 001, the team owner ordered everything scrapped, said he wouldn't be responsible for another death. We were supposed to destroy all 3 cars. Michael walked closer, reaching out but not quite touching. But rumors started that someone smuggled one out. I never knew if it was true. It was true. Who did it? I don't know. We haven't found any record of what happened between when the program ended and when the car ended up in that salvage yard. Michael nodded slowly. Jonas would know, but Jonas is gone. His daughter said he died thinking they were all destroyed. That must have killed him. These cars were everything to him. Michael finally touched the car, his hand trembling slightly as he ran it along the doorframe. We built these to change racing, to prove that American engineering could compete with anyone. And then it all fell apart. They talked for 2 hours. Michael told stories about working with Jonas, about the obsessive attention to detail, about the late nights and the impossible standards and the pure joy when something finally worked perfectly. He pointed out details on the car that only someone who'd been there could know. The specific way Jonas beveled certain edges, the signature he left in the welds, the modifications that weren't in any blueprint. Before he left, Michael pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. This is a list of everyone who worked on the P-71 program. Most are probably gone now. But if any are still alive, they'd want to know. They'd want to see what you're doing. Caleb took the list. 17 names. Next to each was a role: fabricator, engineer, painter, mechanic. "Thank you," Caleb said. "No, thank you, for giving us a second chance to finish what we started." After Michael left, Caleb sat in the quiet shop and looked at the list. These were the people who'd poured their skill and passion into this car. They deserved recognition too. He called Avery. "I need help tracking down people. Can you do that?" "Probably. Who are we looking for?" He read her the list. "I'm on it," she said. "This is exactly the kind of research project I'm good at." Over the next month, Avery worked her magic. She found 12 of the 17 people still alive. Some had stayed in racing. Others had moved on to different careers. But when contacted, every single one wanted to be involved. They shared photos, technical documents, stories. One man sent original blueprints he'd kept in his garage for 5 decades. Another sent his personal notebooks filled with Jonas's handwritten notes and calculations. The restoration became something bigger than just fixing a car. It became an act of collective memory, of pulling together pieces of a story that had been scattered and forgotten. And through it all, the car slowly came back to life. The frame was repaired. The body panels were painstakingly reshaped. The engine was rebuilt with a precision that would have made Jonas proud. Lisa Park mixed and remixed until she had shadow blue perfect, then applied it in layers so thin you could barely see them individually, but together created a depth that seemed to glow. Finn visited the shop every weekend, watching with wide eyes as the pile of rust transformed into something beautiful. Ray let him help with small tasks, organizing bolts, cleaning parts, learning the names of tools. "When it's done, can we drive it?" Finn asked one Saturday. "That's the plan," Caleb said. "Where will we go?" "Wherever it wants to take us." As they approached the 1-year mark, the car was finally starting to look like what it had been: sleek, purposeful, alive. The media attention had settled into a dedicated following of people who checked for updates religiously, who debated restoration choices in forums, who felt genuine investment in the outcome. And then Elliot Graves showed up at the shop. Caleb was working late again when the knock came. He opened the bay door expecting a parts delivery and found Graves standing there in a suit that probably cost $5,000. "Mr. Rowan, may I come in?" "What do you want?" "To see what you've accomplished." Against his better judgment, Caleb let him in. Graves walked slowly around the car, saying nothing. His expression was unreadable. Finally, he stopped and turned to Caleb. "I underestimated you." "Yeah, you did. This is remarkable work. You've managed something I didn't think possible." "Thanks, I guess." "I want to revise my offer." "Not interested." $6 million, and I'll fund a complete Jonas Mercer exhibition at a museum of your choosing. His name on everything. Full credit to your team. You'd be part of the story." It was a good offer. Maybe the best offer. Caleb could walk away with financial security and the knowledge that the car would be cared for properly. But he'd also be walking away from something he'd started. From a promise he'd made to Helen Mercer, to Michael Patterson, to all those people who donated their money and faith. "No," Caleb said. Graves's expression hardened. "You're making this about ego. I'm making it about finishing what I started. And when it's finished, what then? You keep it in your garage? Drive it to the grocery store?" "I don't know yet, but it's my choice to make." Graves was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "When you figure it out, call me. The offer stands." He left without another word. Caleb stood alone in the shop, staring at the car that had somehow become the center of his entire life. The smart move was probably taking Graves's money. The safe move. The sensible move. But Caleb was done making smart moves just because other people thought he should. He was going to finish this car, and then he was going to figure out what came next. On his terms. Nobody else's. The word spread faster than Caleb expected. Within days of Graves's visit, The neighborhood knew something was happening. Not just his street, but the whole community seemed to be buzzing with speculation about the car, about the money Caleb had turned down, about what kind of person walks away from $6 million. Avery stopped by on a Thursday evening, letting herself into the garage where Caleb was helping Ray align the restored front suspension. She had that look on her face, the one that meant she'd heard something he wasn't going to like. "People are talking," she said without preamble. Ray glanced up from where he was torquing bolts. "People are always talking. Not like this. There's a rumor going around that Caleb's being irresponsible, that he's prioritizing some vanity project over his son's future." Caleb felt his jaw tighten. "Let me guess. Someone who lives 3 houses down and drives a car worth more than most people's houses?" "Actually, no. This is coming from the school. Apparently some parents are concerned that Finn's father is making poor financial decisions. They don't know anything about my finances. They know you turned down millions of dollars. That's enough for them to have opinions." Ray straightened, wiping his hands on a rag. "People always got opinions about other people's money, especially when it ain't theirs." "I'm just giving you a heads up," Avery said. "Finn might hear things at school." "He already has. He told me last week that some kid said I was stupid for not selling." "What'd he say back?" "That his dad knows what he's doing." Caleb set down his wrench. "Even though I'm not sure that's true anymore." "You're doing fine," Ray said. "Better than fine. This car's coming together exactly like it should." But that wasn't what kept Caleb up at night. The car was fine. The restoration was progressing. What worried him was everything else: the mounting pressure, the constant scrutiny, the growing sense that he'd backed himself into a corner with no clear way out. The bills were piling up despite the crowdfunding. They'd burned through most of the money on parts and materials. The deferred payments would come due eventually. And every day that passed was another day he had to figure out what to actually do with the car once it was finished. He couldn't keep it. That much was becoming clear. The insurance alone would bankrupt him. And keeping a multi-million-dollar car in his garage while working retail made about as much sense as wearing a tuxedo to change oil. But selling to someone like Graves meant letting it disappear into a private collection, which defeated the entire purpose of what they were doing. The museum option was still there. Westbridge had reached out again, upping their offer to $5 million now that the restoration was nearly complete. But something about that felt wrong, too, like he'd done all this work just to hand it off to someone else to take credit for. He was stuck, and he knew it. That Saturday, Finn asked the question Caleb had been dreading. They were at the shop together, Finn sitting on a stool watching Dominic work on the rebuilt engine. The kid had developed a fascination with the mechanical side of things, asking questions that sometimes stumped even the professionals. "Dad, when the car's done, where's it going to go?" Caleb was cleaning parts in a solvent bath. He kept his hands moving, buying time. "I don't know yet, buddy. But you have to know soon, right? Ray said we're maybe 3 months from finishing." Ray's optimistic. "You're avoiding the question." Caleb looked at his 7-year-old son, who was getting too smart for his own good. "Yeah, I am." "Why?" "Because I don't have a good answer." Finn pushed his glasses up. "Ms. Sloan says sometimes the best thing to do is make a list of all the options and then pick the one that makes you feel the least sick to your stomach." "She said that?" "Last week, when I told her you seemed stressed." Caleb felt a surge of gratitude toward Avery for looking out for Finn, mixed with embarrassment that his stress was that obvious to a 7-year-old. "That's actually pretty good advice," Dominic said from where he was working. "What are your options?" Caleb dried his hands. "Sell it to a private collector for stupid money, sell it to a museum for slightly less stupid money, or keep it and go broke trying to maintain it." "Those all sound bad," Finn said. "Yeah, they do. So maybe you need a fourth option." "Like what?" Finn shrugged. "I don't know. But you're smart. You'll figure it out." That simple faith hit Caleb harder than any criticism could have. Finn believed in him completely, without reservation. The weight of that belief was crushing and motivating in equal measure. That night, Caleb sat at his kitchen table with a legal pad and actually made the list Avery had suggested. He wrote down every option, every possibility, everything he could think of. Then he sat back and looked at it. Every option ended with him giving up the car. Every option meant someone else deciding what happened to Jonas Mercer's legacy. Every option felt like failure. He was still staring at the pad when his phone rang. Unknown number again. He almost didn't answer, but he was tired and frustrated and figured, why not? Caleb Rowan? A voice he didn't recognize, professional and measured. Yeah. My name is Victoria Chen. I'm the director of the National Automotive Heritage Foundation. I've been following your restoration project with great interest. If this is another purchase offer, it's not. I'm calling to propose something different, a partnership. That got his attention. I'm listening. The foundation is in the process of creating a new museum dedicated to American automotive innovation. We're looking for centerpiece vehicles, cars that tell important stories about American engineering and ingenuity. Your P71 would be perfect. Museums have already offered to buy it. We're not interested in buying it. We're interested in you retaining ownership while we handle display, maintenance, insurance, and public access. You'd own the car. We'd be its custodians. Caleb sat up straighter. Keep talking. The arrangement would work like this. You retain legal ownership and decision-making authority. We provide climate-controlled display space, security, insurance, and all maintenance at our expense. The car would be displayed publicly with full credit to Jonas Mercer, his team, your restoration crew, and you as the discoverer and owner. We'd build an entire exhibition around it. The history, the engineering, the people who made it possible. What's the catch? The car stays with us. You can visit any time, but it lives at the museum. We'd need a minimum commitment of 10 years with options to extend or renegotiate, and we'd want to document the final stages of restoration for the exhibition. You'd give me final approval on everything? The displays, the information, how Mercer is credited? You'd be a consulting partner on the exhibition. We'd work together to tell the story right. It was almost too good to be true, which usually meant it was. Why would you do this? Why not just buy it like everyone else wants to? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Because the Foundation's mission is to preserve automotive heritage, not lock it away. We believe significant cars should belong to the people who found them, who saved them, who loved them enough to do the work. We just provide the means to share them with everyone else. I need time to think about this. Of course. But Caleb, I've been doing this for 20 years. I've seen hundreds of important cars disappear into private collections. I've seen families go broke trying to maintain vehicles they can't afford to keep. This is a way to honor what you've built without destroying yourself in the process. After she hung up, Caleb sat in the kitchen for a long time, thinking. He called Marcus first. It sounds too good to be true, Marcus said immediately. That's what I thought. But that doesn't mean it is. Chen's Foundation has a good reputation. They've done similar arrangements with other significant vehicles. You looked them up? While you were on the phone. I'm fast. Marcus paused. You thinking about it? Yeah, I am. What does your gut say? Caleb thought about that. My gut says I'm tired of fighting, tired of everyone having an opinion about what I should do. This feels like a way to do right by the car without selling my soul. Then maybe that's your answer. Maybe. He called Avery next. She was more cautious. I want you to have an attorney review any contract before you sign anything. The foundation might be legitimate, but you need protection. I don't have money for an attorney. I do. Consider it part of my ongoing apology for being terrible when you bought the car. You've apologized enough. Humor me. This is too important to mess up because you didn't read the fine print. Then he called Helen Mercer. She listened quietly as he explained the offer, not interrupting once. When he finished, she was silent for so long he thought the call had dropped. Helen, you still there? I'm here. I'm just... Her voice was thick. My father would have loved this, loved that someone was fighting to keep his work public, loved that you cared enough to make it complicated instead of easy. So you think I should do it? I think you should do whatever lets you sleep at night, but yes, I think this honors what my father built in a way that selling never could. The next morning, Caleb called Victoria back and told her he wanted to move forward. She scheduled a meeting for the following week at the Foundation's offices, 3 hours north. Avery went with him. So did Marcus. They piled into Marcus's van and drove through rain that seemed determined to match Caleb's mood. Uncertain, heavy, relentless. The Foundation's building was impressive without being ostentatious. A modern structure with massive windows overlooking a collection of vintage vehicles displayed like art pieces. Victoria met them in the lobby, mid-50s with sharp eyes and a firm handshake. Thank you for coming. Let me show you around. She walked them through the facility, pointing out cars Caleb recognized from magazines and history books. A pre-war Duesenberg, a Tucker 48, a Shelby Cobra. Each had a placard explaining not just the car, but the story. Who built it, who saved it, why it mattered. We're not just preserving vehicles, Victoria explained. We're preserving the stories of human ingenuity and passion. That's what makes these cars significant. They ended up in a conference room where Victoria laid out the proposed contract. Avery's attorney was there via video conference, reviewing every clause, asking pointed questions about liability, insurance, access rights, dispute resolution. The meeting lasted 4 hours. When it was over, Avery looked at Caleb. It's legitimate. The terms are fair. Better than fair, actually. What do you think? Caleb asked Marcus. I think you found a way to keep the car without keeping it. That's pretty smart. Victoria leaned forward. I want to be clear about one thing, Caleb. If you do this, the car becomes public property in practice even though you retain ownership. You'll be sharing it with the world. Some people will love how you restored it. Others will criticize your choices. You'll be giving up privacy for preservation. I gave up privacy the day I posted those photos online, Caleb said. At this point, I just want to know the car is safe and people can see it. Then let's make this happen. They signed the agreement 2 weeks later. The foundation would take possession of the car in 4 months, right after the restoration was scheduled to be complete. They'd build the exhibition around it, working with Caleb, Ray, and the rest of the team to tell the full story. But first, they had to finish the car. The final months were brutal. Every detail mattered. Every choice was scrutinized. Lisa Park spent weeks getting the paint finish perfect. Not too glossy, not too matte, just right. Dominic rebuilt the carburetor 3 times before he was satisfied. Ray reworked the interior twice because the stitching wasn't period accurate. And through it all, people kept showing up. Michael Patterson came back, bringing 2 other Horizon Racing veterans who'd worked on the original cars. They spent a weekend going over every detail, offering advice, sharing memories, their weathered hands touching the car with reverence. Helen Mercer visited on a crisp October morning. She stood looking at the car for a long time without speaking, tears running down her face. He'd be so proud, she finally said. So incredibly proud. The crowdfunding backers got regular updates, videos of the progress, photos of milestones, stories from the team. The comment sections became a community, people sharing their own restoration projects, offering encouragement, celebrating each small victory. One comment showed up in late November that made Caleb stop scrolling. I'm a high school shop teacher. I've been showing my students these updates all year. They've learned more about persistence and craftsmanship from watching your project than from any textbook. Thank you for showing them that doing things right matters more than doing them fast. That comment got screenshotted and hung on the wall of Ray's shop. As December approached, the car was almost done. Almost. The engine ran smooth as silk. The body gleamed in shadow blue. The interior was perfect, but there were still small details, trim pieces, badges, final adjustments, and then the rumors started. Someone was asking around about the car, someone with money and influence, someone who wasn't happy about the foundation arrangement. Avery heard it first from a business contact. Elliot Graves is telling people you tricked him, that you strung him along and then sold to the foundation for more money. I didn't sell to anyone. I still own it. He's not worried about facts. He's worried about reputation. He's been telling everyone who'll listen that he should have that car. What can he actually do? Legally? Probably nothing. The contract with the foundation is airtight, but Graves doesn't always operate legally. Marcus got a weird phone call the next week. Someone asking questions about the shop's insurance, about fire codes, about whether they had proper permits for the restoration work. It felt like harassment disguised as bureaucracy. Then Ray's landlord showed up, saying someone had made an offer to buy the building. Someone who wanted the current tenants out. This is Graves, Ray said flatly. He's trying to pressure us through the back door. Can he do that? He can try, but this building's been in my landlord's family for 40 years. He's not selling to some collector with too much money and too little sense. Still, it rattled everyone. They increased security at the shop, started locking doors that had always been open, stopped posting real-time updates about where they were working. It felt like being under siege. One night, Caleb was alone at the shop, against everyone's advice, doing final detail work on the car. The door to the bay rattled, then rattled again, harder. Caleb grabbed a wrench and moved toward the door. "Shop's closed," he yelled. The rattling stopped. Then a voice came through the metal. "Caleb Rowan, this is Officer Matthews with the police. We got a call about a disturbance at this address." Caleb opened the door cautiously. 2 cops stood there looking bored. "Someone called in a noise complaint," the older officer said. "Said there was shouting and possible violence." "There's nobody here but me, and I haven't been shouting." The younger cop looked past him at the car. "That the famous racing car?" "Yeah." "Huh. It's real pretty." He turned to his partner. "No disturbance that I can see." They left, but the message was clear. Someone was watching. Someone was trying to rattle them. Caleb called Victoria that night. "This is escalating. I think Graves is trying to sabotage the whole thing." "He can't. The agreement is signed. The car is legally yours and contractually committed to the foundation. Unless he steals it or destroys it, there's nothing he can do." "Unless he steals it or destroys it" sounds like something I should be worried about. "We can move up the transfer date. Get the car into our secure facility ahead of schedule." "It's not finished." "It's close enough. We can handle the final details here. Caleb, if you're genuinely worried about the car's safety, we should move it now." He hated that she was right. They scheduled the transfer for the following week. Ray wasn't happy about not finishing every last detail, but he agreed it was the smart move. Lisa wanted 3 more days with the paint, but settled for 2. The night before the car was scheduled to leave, the whole team gathered at the shop. Ray, Lisa, Dominic, Marcus, Avery, and a dozen others who'd contributed over the 18 months. They stood around the car, this thing they'd poured themselves into, and nobody quite knew what to say. "Well," Ray finally said, "we did it. We brought Jonas Mercer's work back to life." "To Jonas," someone said, raising a beer. "To Jonas," they echoed. Finn was there too, sitting on Caleb's shoulders, taking in the car one last time before it left. "It looks like a spaceship," Finn said. "It kind of does, doesn't it? I'm gonna miss it." "Me too, buddy, but we'll get to visit it anytime we want." "It won't be the same." "No, it won't." That night, after everyone had gone home, Caleb sat alone in the shop one last time. He thought about the salvage yard 18 months ago, about the rusted wreck that had looked like trash to everyone else. He thought about the journey from there to here, about all the people who'd helped, all the obstacles they'd overcome. He thought about Sarah, who'd never gotten to see this. She would have loved it, the story, the community, the impossible task accomplished through stubborn determination. "We did good, Sarah," he said quietly. "I think we did really good." The next morning, the Foundation's transport truck arrived right on schedule. It was a climate-controlled, fully enclosed trailer worth more than Caleb's house. The driver was a specialist who'd moved hundreds of priceless vehicles. They loaded the car with extreme care, straps positioned precisely, wheel chocks custom-fitted, every movement calculated. Ray supervised every second, barking corrections at anyone who moved too fast or gripped too hard. When the car was finally secured and the trailer door closed, Caleb felt something unexpected: relief. The weight he'd been carrying for 18 months lifted slightly. The car was safe now, protected, beyond the reach of collectors with bad intentions. Victoria was there for the transfer, signing paperwork and shaking hands. "We'll take good care of it," she promised, "and we'll see you in 3 months for the exhibition opening." 3 months? That's how long it'll take to build out the displays, film the documentary components, and prepare the full presentation. You'll be part of all of it. After the truck pulled away, the shop felt empty. All that remained was the evidence of work done, stains on the concrete, tools scattered around, the ghost of 18 months of effort. "What now?" Marcus asked. Caleb looked around the space. "Now we clean up, and then we figure out what's next." The next few weeks were strange. Caleb went back to work at the hardware store, back to picking up Finn from school, back to a routine that felt normal except for the hole where the car used to be. The online community was still active, discussing the restoration, speculating about the exhibition, sharing their own stories. But without daily updates, the frenzy had calmed to a steady simmer. Then, 6 weeks after the car had been transferred, Victoria called. "We found something. During our documentation process, we discovered a hidden compartment in the trunk. It was behind the original floor pan, sealed so well we almost missed it. What was in it? Documents, original blueprints for all three P-71 cars, engineering notes in Jonas Mercer's handwriting, and a letter. A letter? Addressed to whoever saves this car. Want me to read it to you? Caleb sat down. Yeah, please. Victoria's voice changed, taking on the measured tone of someone reading something important. If you're reading this, it means my work survived. It means someone saw value where others saw waste. I built these cars to prove that American engineering could compete with anyone, to show that innovation matters more than tradition. The Horizon program failed, but the ideas behind it were sound. Don't let anyone tell you this car is just metal and machinery. It's proof that doing something right is always worth the effort, even if the world isn't ready to appreciate it. Thank you for caring. Thank you for finishing what we started. Jonas Mercer, April 1974. Caleb felt his throat tighten. He knew. He knew someone would find it. He hoped, and he was right. Victoria paused. We'd like to include the letter in the exhibition, with your permission. Yes, absolutely yes. There's one more thing. We've been doing research into the accident that killed the test driver, the one that ended the program. What did you find? It wasn't mechanical failure. The team owner had been cutting costs, using substandard safety equipment to save money. The driver's death wasn't Jonas's fault, but he blamed himself anyway. That's why he sealed these documents in the car. It was his way of saying the work itself was good, even if everything around it fell apart. Caleb thought about that. About carrying blame that wasn't yours. About trying to protect something important in a world that didn't seem to care. Jonas and I would have gotten along, he said quietly. Over the next 2 months, Caleb made several trips to the foundation to work on the exhibition. They built displays around the car showing the restoration process, the team who'd done the work, the original Horizon racing crew. They incorporated the hidden documents into a climate-controlled case next to the car. And they made sure Jonas Mercer's name was everywhere, on the main placard, in the documentary they were producing, in the educational materials being developed for schools. Helen Mercer visited during the installation. She stood in the exhibition space, looking at her father's name in letters 2 feet tall, and wept. Thank you, she said to Caleb. Thank you for giving him back to me. The opening was scheduled for a Saturday in March. Invitations went out to everyone who'd been part of the journey, the restoration team, the crowdfunding backers, the Horizon racing veterans, automotive historians, journalists, and the general public. Elliot Graves was not invited. The week before the opening, Avery knocked on Caleb's door holding a garment bag. You need something decent to wear. The press is going to be there. You're going to be photographed. I have decent clothes. You have hardware store clothes. This is different. She thrust the bag at him. It's a gift. Don't argue. Inside was a suit, not flashy, not expensive looking, but clearly well made and tailored to his measurements. How did you... I'm good at details. Just accept it gracefully. The night before the opening, Caleb couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about everything that had led to this moment. The $100 gamble, the mockery, the discovery, the decision to restore instead of sell, the team that had come together, the community that had formed. At 3 a.m., he got up and went to Finn's room. His son was asleep, glasses on the nightstand, mouth slightly open. Tomorrow's going to be weird, buddy, Caleb whispered. But we made it. We actually made it. The opening day was chaos. The parking lot was full by 9 a.m., even though the doors didn't open until 10. News vans lined the street. People were lined up around the building. Inside, Caleb stood with his team in a private area, all of them dressed better than they'd probably ever been. Ray kept tugging at his tie. Lisa had worn heels and immediately regretted it. Dominic looked uncomfortable in anything that wasn't coveralls. Victoria found them 20 minutes before the doors opened. You ready? No, Caleb said honestly. Good. That means you care. She smiled. The car looks perfect, by the way. The lighting crew outdid themselves. When the doors finally opened, the crowd poured in. Caleb watched from a distance as people approached the car, as they read the displays, as they pointed at photos of the restoration process. He saw people taking pictures, saw kids pressing close to the velvet rope to get a better look, saw older men who'd clearly been part of the racing world in the 70s standing in respectful silence. And then he saw Avery. She was standing near the entrance, and next to her, looking distinctly uncomfortable, was Elliot Graves. Caleb felt his jaw tighten. He started to move toward them, but Avery caught his eye and shook her head slightly. She walked Graves toward the car, speaking quietly. Caleb couldn't hear what she was saying, but he could see Graves's expression change as he got closer to the exhibition. The arrogance faded. Something else replaced it. Maybe respect, maybe regret. Graves stood in front of the car for a long time. Then he turned and left without speaking to anyone. Later, Avery found Caleb. "What did you say to him?" he asked. "I told him that this is what happens when someone cares more about the work than the money. I told him he could have had this, the recognition, the respect, the legacy, if he'd been willing to share instead of possess." She smiled slightly. "I don't think he'll be bothering you anymore." The exhibition officially opened with a ceremony. Victoria spoke about the foundation's mission. Helen Mercer gave a tearful speech about her father. Ray, speaking for the restoration team, talked about the privilege of working on something significant. And then it was Caleb's turn. He stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, with Finn sitting in the front row. "I'm not good at speeches," he started. "I'm a guy who works at a hardware store and thought $100 was worth gambling on something everyone else thought was trash." People laughed. "But here's what I learned. Value isn't about price. It's about recognizing that someone poured themselves into creating something, and that deserves respect." Jonas Mercer built these cars with everything he had. They failed not because the work was bad, but because the circumstances were wrong. And 50 years later, someone gave me the chance to prove that good work doesn't disappear. It just waits for someone to see it. He looked at Finn. "My son asked me why I didn't just sell this car and take the money. And the truth is, the money would have been nice, really nice. But this," he gestured at the exhibition, "this matters more. This is proof that regular people can do extraordinary things if they care enough to try." The applause was overwhelming. Afterward, people wanted to talk to him, to shake his hand, to hear the story firsthand. Caleb did his best, but mostly he just wanted to stand with his team and look at what they'd built together. Michael Patterson found him near the end of the day. "Jonas would have been happy," the old fabricator said. "Not just about the car, about this, about people caring. I hope so." "I know so." Michael gripped his shoulder. "You did good, kid. Real good." As the crowd thinned and the day wound down, Caleb stood alone in front of the car one last time. It looked perfect under the museum lights, shadow blue gleaming, every curve precise, every detail right. "We finished it," he said quietly to no one, "just like we said we would." Finn appeared at his side, slipping his small hand into Caleb's. "It looks even better here than it did in the shop," Finn said. "Yeah, it really does." "Are you sad it's not ours anymore?" Caleb thought about that. "It's still ours. We just get to share it now." That's what Miss Sloane said, too. She's a smart woman. They stood there together, father and son, looking at the car that had changed everything. Tomorrow they'd go back to normal life, school and work and bills and all the regular struggles. But tonight, they had this. Proof that taking a chance on something everyone else dismissed could lead somewhere extraordinary. "Dad," Finn said. "Yeah, buddy? Can we come back next weekend? I want to see it again." Caleb smiled. "Anytime you want. It's not going anywhere." And it wasn't. The car would stay here, telling its story to anyone who wanted to listen. Jonas Mercer's name would be remembered. The team's work would be recognized. And somewhere in all of that, there'd be a note about a hardware store employee who saw value in a rusted wreck and refused to let it stay forgotten. That was enough. More than enough. The week after the exhibition opening, reality settled back in with the subtlety of a hammer. Caleb returned to Morrison Hardware, stocking shelves and mixing paint, while customers asked if he was that guy with the $1 million car. He'd smile and confirm, then go back to explaining the difference between indoor and outdoor caulk. The bills hadn't stopped coming just because the car was finished. In fact, they'd gotten worse. The deferred payments from the restoration were coming due. Parts suppliers who'd waited patiently for 18 months now needed to be paid. Raised shop rental, Lisa's materials costs, insurance premiums that had accumulated while the car was being worked on. Caleb sat at his kitchen table on a Tuesday night, calculator in hand, looking at numbers that didn't add up no matter how many times he rearranged them. He owed roughly $60,000. He had $4,000 in the bank. The math was brutal and unforgiving. His phone rang. He almost didn't answer, assuming it was another creditor, but the caller ID showed Victoria Chen. "Caleb, I have news, good news, I think. I could use some." The exhibition's been getting significant attention, more than we anticipated. We've had visitors from 17 states in the first week alone. The documentary preview we posted online has 2 million views. "That's great, Victoria, but I'm kind of drowning here financially." "I know. That's why I'm calling. The foundation board met yesterday. They want to commission you." Caleb set down his calculator. "Commission me to do what?" "Find more cars, forgotten pieces of automotive history. Restore them through the same model you used for the P71. Community involvement, crowdfunding, transparent documentation. We'd provide funding, resources, and eventually display space. You'd own the cars, but partner with us for preservation and public access." "You want me to do this again?" "We want you to do it as many times as you're willing. There are hundreds of significant vehicles rotting in junkyards and barns across the country. You have a gift for recognizing them, and you've proven you can rally people around saving them." Caleb's mind was spinning. "What kind of funding are we talking about?" "For the first project, we'd advance $50,000 against future partnership agreements, enough to clear your current debts and start the next restoration. If that succeeds, we'd expand the program." $50,000. Enough to breathe, enough to stop the bleeding. "What's the catch?" "You'd need to quit your retail job and do this full time. The foundation needs someone dedicated to the search and restoration process. We'd provide a salary, not huge, but livable. $60,000 a year plus benefits." Caleb did the math instantly. $60,000 was more than he made at the hardware store, with benefits. Doing something he actually cared about. "I need to think about this." "Of course. But Caleb, don't overthink it. You've already proven you can do this work. Now we're just asking you to do it again." After she hung up, Caleb sat in the quiet kitchen, staring at his reflection in the darkened window. A week ago, he'd been a hardware store employee who got lucky. Now someone was offering him a career doing what he loved. It felt impossible, which meant it was probably real. He called Marcus first. "Take it," Marcus said immediately. "You didn't even let me explain, but..." "Don't need to. Victoria's offering you a way out of retail hell and a chance to do meaningful work." "What's to think about?" "Job security, benefits, the fact that I have a kid to support." She's offering benefits. "And job security in retail is a myth. Morrison's could lay you off tomorrow. At least this way you'd be doing something that matters." Caleb called Avery next. She was more measured. "What does Finn think?" "I haven't told him yet." That's your answer right there. If you're excited enough that you want to tell him, take the job. If you're worried about telling him, don't. That night, Caleb sat Finn down after dinner. "I got offered a new job today." Finn looked up from his homework. "Doing what?" "Finding old cars that need to be saved, restoring them, working with museums to preserve them." "Like you did with our car." "Exactly like that." Finn's eyes lit up. "That's so cool. Are you going to take it? It means I'd be traveling sometimes, looking for cars in different places. You might have to stay with Marcus or Ms. Sloan when I'm gone." "I don't care. You should do it." "Just like that?" "Dad, you've been way happier working on the car than you ever were at the hardware store." "I'm 7, not stupid." Caleb felt something in his chest crack open. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You just don't listen sometimes." The next morning, Caleb called Victoria and accepted the offer. He gave his 2 weeks' notice at Morrison Hardware, endured the half-hearted congratulations from coworkers who'd never quite understood why he was there in the first place, and started planning his transition. The foundation wired the $50,000 within 48 hours. Caleb paid off every outstanding debt from the restoration, sent checks to suppliers who'd waited patiently, cleared the credit cards that had been accumulating interest for 2 years. For the first time since Sarah died, he had a positive bank balance and no collection notices in his mailbox. It felt like breathing after being underwater. His first assignment from the foundation was simple: find something worth saving. They gave him a budget, a truck, and access to their network of automotive historians and salvage yard contacts. The rest was up to him. Caleb started close to home, visiting junkyards within a day's drive. He saw plenty of cars, some interesting, most just old and broken. Nothing that spoke to him the way the P71 had. Then 3 weeks into his search, he got a call from a salvage yard owner in rural Pennsylvania. "You the guy who found that racing car?" "Yeah." "Got something you might want to see. Old pickup truck, been here since before I bought the place in '89. Owner never claimed it. Something about it seems off, though. Too nice under all the rust." "What kind of pickup?" "Hell if I know. Ford, maybe? It's got a handmade bed, wooden slats, metal frame, weird construction. Handmade. Custom." Those words made Caleb's instincts perk up. "I'll be there tomorrow." The drive to Pennsylvania took 6 hours. Finn came along. It was spring break, and Caleb had promised no more disappearing for work without bringing him when possible. They listened to podcasts and argued about which fast food to stop for and felt, for the first time in a long while, like things were moving in the right direction. The salvage yard was exactly what Caleb expected. Acres of automotive corpses slowly returning to the earth. The owner, a guy named Pete with a beard down to his chest, met them at the gate. "It's out back. Fair warning, it's rough." He led them through rows of rusted vehicles to the far corner of the property. There, half buried in weeds and covered in 40 years of grime, sat a pickup truck that looked like it had been forgotten by time itself. But Pete was right. Something about it was off. The proportions were wrong for a standard truck. The bed was definitely handmade. Wooden slats fitted into a custom metal frame with craftsmanship that went way beyond typical farm repairs. And the cab, beneath all the rust, had curves that seemed too deliberate. Caleb walked around it slowly, the same way he'd walked around the P-71 that first day. "What do you think?" Pete asked. "I think I need to see under the hood." The hood was rusted shut, but Pete brought a pry bar and some penetrating oil. It took 20 minutes of patient work before it finally gave with a shriek of protesting metal. The engine bay was a mess of corrosion and debris, but there, mounted on the firewall, was a small brass plate. "Custom build, R. Sullivan. 1952." Caleb felt that familiar electricity. "Who's R. Sullivan?" "No idea," Pete said. But Caleb was already pulling out his phone, searching. He found the answer in less than 5 minutes. Robert Sullivan. Custom coach builder in the 1940s and 50s. Specialized in one-off vehicles for wealthy clients. His work was highly sought after by collectors, and his surviving builds were worth serious money. This wasn't a farm truck. This was a custom-built vehicle by a legitimate craftsman. "How much?" Caleb asked. Pete scratched his beard. "Given who you are and what you do, 500, and you haul it out yourself." They shook on it. Getting the truck back to the shop was an adventure involving a flatbed, 2 sketchy ramps, and Finn nervously watching while Caleb and the tow driver winched a vehicle that might collapse at any moment. But they got it loaded, got it home, and got it into Ray's shop, where the old fabricator took one look and whistled. "Well, you did it again. Found something nobody else wanted that turns out to be gold." "We don't know if it's gold yet." "It's a Robert Sullivan custom. It's gold. Question is whether it's fool's gold or the real thing." Over the next week, they documented everything. The custom bed frame, the hand-shaped body panels, the evidence of meticulous craftsmanship beneath decades of neglect. And hidden in the glove box, wrapped in oilcloth that had somehow survived, they found original build documents. The truck had been commissioned in 1952 by a lumber baron in Oregon. Sullivan had built it as a working vehicle that was also a work of art, something beautiful enough to show off, but functional enough to actually haul timber. Only 3 Sullivan trucks were ever built. The other 2 were in museums. This one had somehow ended up in a Pennsylvania junkyard. Caleb called Victoria. "We've got number 2. "Tell me." He explained the find, the builder, the significance. Victoria listened without interrupting, then let out a long breath. "Start the restoration. Same model as before. Crowdfunding, community involvement, transparent documentation. I'll start working on the exhibition space. We haven't even confirmed what it's worth yet." "Doesn't matter. It's significant. That's enough." The second crowdfunding campaign launched 2 weeks later. This time, Caleb knew what he was doing. The video was better. The pitch was clearer. The story, about finding another forgotten masterpiece, resonated immediately. They hit their goal in 3 days. The comments section exploded with people who'd been part of the P-71 journey and were excited to do it again. One comment stood out. "I donated to the first project because the story was interesting. I'm donating to this one because you've proven you actually do the work. That matters." The restoration became Caleb's new normal, days spent at the shop with Ray and the team, evenings documenting progress for the online community, weekends with Finn, who'd become something of a celebrity at school for having a dad who found treasure in junkyards. 3 months into this truck restoration, Caleb got a call from an unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Old habits, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Rowan? My name is David Kemp. I'm a collector. I have a proposal for you." "Not interested in selling." "I'm not interested in buying. I want to hire you." That was different. "Hire me to do what?" "I have a collection of vehicles I've acquired over the years. Some significant, some just interesting. I'm getting older and I'm starting to think about legacy. I want them preserved properly, but I don't trust museums to not lock them away. I've watched what you've done with the P-71 and now this truck. I want you to assess my collection and tell me which ones deserve the same treatment." "Why me?" "Because you're not trying to profit. You're trying to preserve. There's a difference." Caleb met with Kemp 2 weeks later at a warehouse in upstate New York. The collection was staggering, 30 vehicles ranging from pre-war classics to experimental prototypes. Some were pristine. Others were projects Kemp had started but never finished. They spent 6 hours going through everything. Caleb took notes, asked questions, examined details. By the end, he'd identified 5 vehicles that were genuinely significant and 3 that were interesting enough to warrant preservation. "What would you charge to coordinate restoration on these?" Kemp asked. "The foundation has a standard fee structure. I'll pay double, and I'll fund the restorations entirely. No crowdfunding necessary, but I want them done right, with full documentation and eventual public access." Caleb did math in his head. Double the foundation's fee for 8 vehicles meant serious money, enough to secure Finn's future, enough to stop worrying about rent and groceries and whether his truck would make it another year. "I'll need to clear it with the foundation first." "Of course. But Mr. Rowan, I'm not the only collector watching what you're doing. If you prove you can handle this, there will be more opportunities, a lot more." On the drive home, Caleb called Victoria. "I just got offered a private commission, big one." "Tell me you said yes." "I said I needed to clear it with you first." "Consider it cleared. Caleb, this is exactly what we hoped would happen. You're becoming the go-to person for significant automotive preservation. That legitimizes the entire program." "It feels weird, like I'm taking advantage." "You're being paid for expertise and proven results. That's not taking advantage. That's called being a professional." The word hit different than Caleb expected. Professional. He was a professional now. Not just a guy who got lucky, but someone people sought out because he knew what he was doing. That realization settled somewhere deep. The Kemp Commission expanded Caleb's operation. He hired 2 assistants to help with research and documentation. He brought on Lisa full-time for paint analysis. He rented proper office space to manage the growing administrative side of things. And through it all, the Sullivan truck restoration progressed. By early fall, it was nearly complete. The custom bed rebuilt with period-appropriate wood, the body restored to its original green, the engine running smooth. The exhibition was scheduled for November, right before Thanksgiving. The media attention was smaller than the P-71 opening, but more focused. Automotive journalists, preservation experts, collectors who appreciated craftsmanship. Helen Mercer came to the opening. So did Michael Patterson. So did Pete from the salvage yard, looking deeply uncomfortable in a button-down shirt. And standing near the back, trying to blend in, was Elliot Graves. Caleb saw him but didn't approach. Neither did Graves. They existed in the same space without acknowledgement, which felt like progress. During the reception, a woman in her 80s approached Caleb. She had kind eyes and moved slowly, leaning on a cane. "Are you the young man who restored this truck?" "My team did most of the work. I just found it." "I'm Margaret Sullivan. Robert Sullivan was my father." Caleb nearly dropped his drink. "I had no idea any family was still—" "There aren't many of us left. But I wanted to see what he built. I was too young to remember this one specifically, but I remember watching him work. The hours he'd spend getting details perfect." She touched the truck's bed rail gently. "Thank you for treating his work with respect. It deserved respect. Not everyone would have seen that. Most people would have seen scrap." "I'm good at seeing what other people miss," she smiled. "My father was too. He'd have liked you." After she left, Avery appeared with 2 glasses of wine. You've come a long way from that rusted coupe in your driveway. Sometimes I still can't believe this is real. Believe it. You built this. You earned this. She clinked her glass against his. And for what it's worth, Finn's over there telling anyone who'll listen that his dad is the best car finder in the world. Caleb looked across the room where Finn was indeed talking to a group of adults, gesturing enthusiastically. The kid had grown in the past 2 years, taller, more confident, less worried about what other people thought. He's going to be okay, Avery said quietly. You both are. That night, after the exhibition closed and everyone had gone home, Caleb stood in the parking lot with Marcus, both of them exhausted and satisfied. You know what's weird? Marcus said. What? 2 years ago, you were broke, stressed, and working retail. Now you're broke, stressed, and working your dream job. Caleb laughed. That's not much of an improvement. Sure it is. One of those versions of you was dying slowly. This one's actually living. The following week, something unexpected happened. Caleb got a call from Westbridge Museum, the place that had offered $5 million for the P-71 before he turned them down. Mr. Rowan, this is Director Patricia Morrison. I wanted to reach out because we're launching a new fellowship program for automotive preservation specialists. We'd like to nominate you. What's the fellowship? Full funding for advanced research and documentation of significant vehicles. Basically, we'd pay you to do what you're already doing, but with access to our entire research library and conservation facilities. It's a 2-year program with possibility of extension. Why me? Because you've demonstrated something rare. The ability to identify significance, rally community support, and execute high-quality restorations while maintaining public access and historical integrity. That's exactly what the field needs more of. Caleb thought about it for exactly 10 seconds. I'm interested. Good. There's one condition, though. You'd need to present a major project proposal, something ambitious that demonstrates why you deserve the fellowship. How ambitious? That's up to you. But we're looking for something that pushes boundaries, something that makes people rethink what's possible in automotive preservation. After he hung up, Caleb sat staring at his office wall, thinking, what was the most ambitious thing he could propose? The answer came to him slowly, then all at once. The P-71 was car number 3. Cars 1 and 2 had allegedly been destroyed. But what if they weren't? What if, like number 3, someone had saved them? Finding one Jonas Mercer prototype had been luck. Finding a second would be legendary. Finding all 3 would be impossible, which made it perfect. He called Victoria. I want to search for the other 2 P-71s. Silence on the other end. Then, you think they survived? Someone saved number 3. Why not the others? The team owner ordered them destroyed, but people who love cars don't always follow orders. Michael Patterson said there were rumors. Maybe the rumors were true. That's a massive undertaking, Caleb. You could spend years searching and find nothing. Or I could find them. And if I do, we could reunite all 3 Jonas Mercer prototypes for the first time since 1974. Tell me that's not worth trying. Another pause. Pitch it for the fellowship. If Westbridge funds it, the foundation will support however we can. Caleb spent the next month building his proposal. He researched the Horizon Racing team's dissolution. He tracked down every surviving member he could find. He built a network of contacts in salvage yards across the country. And he found leads. Small ones. Circumstantial ones, but leads nonetheless. A salvage yard in Texas had supposedly received race car parts from an estate sale in 1975. A barn in Montana allegedly held something covered by a tarp that the owner wouldn't show anyone. A storage unit in Florida had been abandoned with automotive equipment inside. None of it was concrete, but all of it was possible. He submitted his proposal to Westbridge 3 days before the deadline. It was 30 pages of research, documentation, and passionate argument for why finding the lost P-71s mattered. The response came 2 weeks later. Patricia Morrison called personally. The board was unanimous. You're approved for the fellowship. Full funding for 2 years. Find those cars. Caleb felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Pure, uncomplicated joy. I will. I promise I will. We know. That's why we're betting on you. He told Finn that night over pizza. So you're going on a treasure hunt? Basically, yeah. Can I come sometimes? When it doesn't conflict with school. Finn grinned. This is the coolest thing ever. It might be nothing. We might not find anything. You found the first one when nobody believed it existed. You'll find these too. That absolute faith, again. The certainty that his dad could do impossible things. Caleb hoped like hell the kid was right. The search began in earnest after Thanksgiving. Caleb followed every lead, no matter how thin. He drove thousands of miles. He looked in barns and storage units and salvage yards. He talked to old fabricators and retired team owners and anyone who might have been connected to Horizon Racing. Most leads went nowhere, but some stayed alive, kept hope burning. The barn in Montana turned out to be full of tractor parts. The storage unit in Florida held nothing but old furniture. But the Texas salvage yard proved interesting. The owner, a woman named Carmen, who'd inherited the business from her father, remembered the estate sale parts. My dad kept them separate, said they were too nice to scrap. They're still in the back warehouse, I think. The back warehouse was more like an aircraft hangar, filled with parts organized by decade and type. In the far corner, covered in dust and marked with faded tags from 1975, Caleb found them. Custom suspension components, hand-fabricated brackets, a fuel tank with the same construction style as the P71/E003, and stamped on each piece, P71/E001, car number 1. The car that had killed test driver Tommy Chen, the car that was supposed to have been completely destroyed. At least some of it had survived. Caleb stood there, holding a bracket that had been part of automotive history, and felt tears prick his eyes. "You okay?" Carmen asked. "Yeah, I just found something I didn't think existed anymore." "That happened to you a lot?" "More than it probably should." He bought every piece Carmen had, filled his entire truck bed with parts, and drove straight to Ray's shop. They laid everything out, cataloging and photographing. "This is from 001, Ray confirmed. "No question, but it's not enough to rebuild a whole car." "No, but it's proof the car existed, proof someone tried to save it." Caleb looked at the parts spread across the shop floor, which means more might be out there. The search intensified. With proof that parts from 001 existed, other leads became more credible. A mechanic in Nevada remembered working on weird racing parts in the 80s. A collector in Virginia had supposedly bought Horizon stuff at an auction decades ago. Caleb chased them all. By February, he'd accumulated enough parts from P71/E001 to potentially rebuild 30% of the car. Not enough for a complete restoration, but enough to display what had existed. P71/E002 remained elusive, but in March, Caleb got a call that changed everything. "Mr. Rowan, this is Walter Hutchins. I worked as a transporter for racing teams in the 70s. I heard you're looking for the Horizon prototypes." "I am. I moved 002 after the team collapsed. I was told to take it to a crusher in Ohio, but..." He paused. "The car was too beautiful. I couldn't do it. So I took it somewhere else instead." Caleb's heart was pounding. "Where?" "A barn in West Virginia. Property belonged to my uncle. He's been dead 20 years now, but the property's still in the family. Far as I know, the car's still there." "Can you take me to it?" "I'm 83 years old. I'm not going anywhere, but I can give you the address." 2 days later, Caleb and Marcus were driving through rural West Virginia, following directions to a property that supposedly hadn't been touched in 2 decades. The barn was exactly where Walter said it would be. Weathered wood, sagging roof, surrounded by overgrown fields. The doors were padlocked, but Marcus had brought bolt cutters. Inside was dark and smelled like hay and thyme. Caleb turned on his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the interior, and there, covered by a tarp that had rotted in places, revealing glimpses of shadow blue underneath, was P71/E002. It was in rough shape, flat tires, surface rust, evidence of mice and weather damage. But it was intact, complete, savable. Marcus stood next to him, speechless. "We found it," Caleb finally said. "We actually found it." "Yeah, we did." They called Victoria from the barn. She answered on the first ring. "Tell me you found something." "We found 002. Complete. Restorable one." He heard her breath catch. "All 3. You're going to have all 3. 2 complete cars and parts from the 3rd. Close enough." "Caleb, do you understand what this means? Jonas Mercer's entire P71 series reunited after 50 years. This is automotive history. I know. No, I don't think you do. This is career-defining work. This puts you in textbooks. This matters. After they hung up, Caleb and Marcus sat on the barn floor, looking at the car they'd just found. Your life is weird, man, Marcus said. Tell me about it. 2 years ago, you were stocking shelves. Now you're finding lost race cars in West Virginia barns. And I still have no idea what I'm doing half the time. Nobody does. You're just better at faking it than most people. They arranged transport for the car, got it back to Ray's shop, and began the process all over again. Documentation, assessment, planning. The news spread fast. Major automotive publications picked up the story. The documentary about the P-71 search was greenlit by a streaming service. Universities reached out about research partnerships. And through it all, Caleb kept working. Because that's what he did. He found things worth saving, and he saved them. Simple as that. Complicated as hell, but worth every minute. The restoration of P-71/E002 took 14 months. Caleb had learned from the first car what shortcuts to avoid, which specialists to trust, how to manage the endless stream of decisions that could make or break a project. But even with that knowledge, bringing the second car back to life tested every skill he'd developed. The parts from P-71/E001 presented a different challenge. They couldn't rebuild a complete car, but Ray had an idea that was somehow better. They built a skeletal frame display, showing the engineering underneath, the craftsmanship that made Jonas Mercer's work revolutionary. The custom suspension, the hand-fabricated brackets, the innovative fuel system. All of it exposed and explained, a transparent view into genius that most people never got to see. Finn turned 9 during the restoration. He'd grown up around these cars now, could name parts and explain engineering concepts that would stump most adults. On weekends, he'd work alongside the team, slowly learning the craft himself. One Saturday afternoon, Caleb found him in the shop with Ray. The two of them bent over a suspension component from 001. See how the weld bead is uniform all the way through? Ray was saying. That's the mark of a master. No variation, no cold spots, just perfect fusion. Could we do that now? Finn asked. With modern equipment, sure, but Mercer did this with what he had in 1974. That's the impressive part. He made perfection out of limitation. Caleb watched from the doorway, not interrupting. This was the legacy he was building. Not just saved cars, but knowledge passed down. Skills preserved, understanding that excellence was timeless. Later driving home, Finn was quiet for a long time before speaking. Dad, do you ever think about Mom? About how she'd feel about all this? The question hit unexpectedly. They didn't talk about Sarah much anymore. Not because they'd forgotten, but because the grief had evolved into something manageable. Something that lived alongside their daily lives instead of crushing them. All the time, Caleb said honestly. What makes you ask? I was thinking about how she was always saying you were too smart to be stocking shelves, that you should do something bigger. She said that? A lot. When you weren't around. She'd tell me that someday you'd figure out what you were supposed to be doing. Finn pushed his glasses up. I think she'd be happy you figured it out. Caleb's throat tightened. Yeah, buddy, I think she would be too. Do you think she knows, like wherever she is? I hope so. I really hope so. They drove in comfortable silence after that, the kind of quiet that only exists between people who understand each other completely. By the summer, all 3 P-71 projects were nearing completion. The foundation had been planning the exhibition for months. Not just a display, but an entire wing dedicated to Jonas Mercer's work and the people who'd saved it. Helen Mercer had been involved in every decision, working with the curators to tell her father's story honestly. Not just the successes, but the failures too. The test driver who'd died, the program that collapsed, the years of obscurity before someone finally recognized what he'd built. My father wasn't perfect, she told Caleb during one of their planning sessions. He was brilliant and obsessive and sometimes difficult to work with, but he cared deeply about doing things right. That's what I want people to understand, that excellence requires sacrifice. And sometimes that sacrifice is painful. The exhibition was scheduled to open in September, timed to coincide with the 50th anniversary of the Horizon. Racing team's dissolution. The foundation had pulled out all the stops. The 3 cars would be displayed together for the first time. surrounded by artifacts, documents, and the stories of everyone who'd built them and everyone who'd saved them. But 2 months before the opening, Caleb got an unexpected visitor at his office. Elliot Graves walked in without knocking, looking older than Caleb remembered. The arrogance was still there, but tempered by something else. Time, maybe, or perspective. "Mr. Rowan, do you have a moment?" Caleb leaned back in his chair. "Depends on why you're here." "To apologize." That was unexpected. For what specifically? The threats, the harassment, or the general condescension? All of it. Graves sat down without being invited. "I've spent the last 2 years watching you accomplish something I couldn't. Not because I lacked the resources, but because I lacked the vision. You saw preservation where I saw possession. You built community where I tried to buy control. Is there a point to this? The point is that I was wrong. About you, about the cars, about what matters in this work." Graves pulled an envelope from his jacket. "I'd like to make a donation to the foundation, $5 million, unrestricted, to support your preservation program." Caleb stared at the envelope. "Why?" "Because I'm 73 years old and I'm starting to think about legacy. I have 300 cars in climate-controlled storage that maybe 10 people have ever seen. When I die, they'll be auctioned off and scattered. Nothing I've collected will matter because I never shared it." He set the envelope on the desk. "This is my chance to be part of something that actually matters. $5 million doesn't erase what you did. I know, but maybe it's a start toward doing better." After Graves left, Caleb sat holding the envelope, trying to process what had just happened. He called Victoria. "Elliot Graves just donated $5 million to the foundation." Silence. Then, "I'm sorry, what?" "He apologized. Actually apologized, and wrote a check. People don't change like that, not people like Graves. Maybe watching someone do meaningful work while he hoarded expensive metal made him rethink things. Or maybe he's trying to buy his way into the exhibition. He didn't ask for anything, just said he wanted to support the program." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "If it's legitimate, that money could fund preservation work for years. We could save dozens of significant vehicles, create educational programs, build a real infrastructure for automotive heritage." "So we take it?" "We take it, but we do it transparently. We acknowledge his support while being honest about the complicated history. No sugarcoating." The donation was announced 2 weeks later. The response from the automotive community was mixed. Some people praised Graves for coming around. Others called it too little too late. Caleb stayed out of the debate. He had work to do. The final weeks before the exhibition opening were chaos. Details that should have been finalized months ago suddenly needed attention. The lighting wasn't right. The placard text needed revision. The audio guide script was too technical for general audiences. Caleb found himself in 100 meetings, making 1,000 decisions, all while trying to maintain some semblance of normal life for Finn. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. 3 days before the opening, the cars were moved into position. All three P-71s, displayed in formation as if ready to race. The skeletal frame of 001 in front, showing the engineering. The pristine 002 in the middle, showing the beauty. And 003, Caleb's car, the one that started everything, bringing up the rear, its restoration documented in photos surrounding the display. Caleb stood in the exhibition hall late at night, alone with the cars, and felt something he couldn't quite name. Pride, yes. Satisfaction, definitely, but also something deeper, a sense that he'd done what he was meant to do. "You did good." He turned. Avery stood at the entrance, still in her work clothes, clearly having come straight from the office. "What are you doing here?" "Couldn't sleep. Figured you'd be here obsessing." "I'm not obsessing. You're standing in an empty museum at midnight staring at cars." "That's the definition of obsessing." She walked over to stand next to him. "But I get it. This is your legacy." "It's Jonas Mercer's legacy. I just found it." "No, you saved it. There's a difference." She gestured at the exhibition. "None of this happens if you walk past that salvage yard. None of it happens if you take the easy money. You chose the hard path because it was the right path. That's legacy. I just didn't want to sell junk to someone who'd hide it away. You saw value where everyone else saw trash. You fought for something you believed in even when people thought you were crazy. You built something meaningful in a world that mostly values easy profits." She looked at him. That matters, Caleb. More than you probably realize. They stood in comfortable silence, looking at the cars that had somehow brought them from neighbors who barely spoke to something approaching real friendship. Thank you, Caleb said quietly, for believing in this, for believing in me when I wasn't sure I believed in myself. That's what friends do. The opening day arrived with perfect weather and overwhelming attendance. The line to get in wrapped around the building. News crews set up on the lawn. Automotive journalists from around the world had flown in for the event. Inside, Caleb stood with his team, Ray, Lisa, Dominic, Marcus, and 24 others who'd contributed to the restorations. They were all dressed up, all uncomfortable in formal clothes, all proud of what they'd accomplished together. Helen Mercer was there with her family, children and grandchildren who'd never known Jonas but were learning his story through the cars he'd built. Michael Patterson was there, now in his mid-70s but still sharp as ever. The surviving Horizon Racing team members were there, some in wheelchairs, all with tears in their eyes. And Finn was there, wearing a suit Avery had bought him, looking absurdly grown up and trying not to show how excited he was. The ceremony began with Victoria welcoming everyone and explaining the foundation's mission. Then Helen spoke about her father, her voice wavering but strong. My father used to say that good work outlives its creator, that if you build something with integrity, it will eventually find the recognition it deserves, even if you're not there to see it. He died thinking his best work had been destroyed. But it hadn't. It was just waiting for someone like Caleb Rowan to see what everyone else missed. The applause was thunderous. Then it was Caleb's turn. He stepped up to the microphone, looking out at hundreds of faces, and felt the weight of the moment. I'm not good at speeches, so I'll keep this short. 3 years ago, I bought a piece of junk for $100 because something about it felt right. I didn't know it was historically significant. I just knew it deserved better than being crushed. That instinct to preserve rather than destroy, to save rather than discard, that's what this is really about. He paused, gathering his thoughts. We live in a world that values new over old, profit over preservation, convenience over craftsmanship. But some things are worth saving even when it's hard, even when people tell you you're wasting your time, even when the smart move is to walk away. Because value isn't always about money. Sometimes it's about recognizing that someone poured their heart into creating something, and that deserves respect. He looked at Finn in the front row. My son named the first car Bolt. He was 7 years old, and he saw a rusted wreck and imagined it as something fast and powerful. That kind of vision, seeing potential where others see waste, that's what we need more of. Not just with cars, but with everything. People, ideas, communities. We're too quick to write things off, too eager to throw away instead of repair. He gestured at the cars behind him. These cars represent second chances. Jonas Mercer got a second chance at recognition. I got a second chance at doing meaningful work. Everyone who contributed to these restorations got a chance to be part of something bigger than themselves. And everyone who visits this exhibition gets a chance to see that excellence is timeless, that craftsmanship matters, that some things are worth fighting for even when the fight is hard. The applause was deafening. Caleb stepped back from the microphone, his hands shaking slightly, and Finn ran up to hug him. That was really good, Dad. Thanks, buddy. Did you practice? Nope. Just said what I was thinking. You should do that more often. After the ceremony, the exhibition opened to the public. Caleb watched people interact with the cars, reading the placards, watching the documentary footage, asking questions. He saw kids Finn's age pressing close to the barriers, eyes wide with wonder. He saw older folks who remembered when these cars were new, pointing and sharing memories. He saw young engineers studying the skeletal frame of 001, taking notes on the fabrication techniques. One moment stuck with him. A teenager, maybe 16, stood in front of 003 reading the entire story, from salvage yard find to completed restoration. When he finished, he turned to his father and said, I want to do something like this someday. That was the point. That was the whole point. As the day wore on, Caleb found himself pulled in a dozen directions. Journalists wanting interviews, collectors wanting to discuss commissions, educators wanting to talk about curriculum development. It was overwhelming in the best possible way. Late in the afternoon, he managed to slip away to a quiet corner with Marcus. This is insane, Caleb said. Yeah, good insane, though. I keep waiting for something to go wrong. For someone to realize I have no idea what I'm doing. You know exactly what you're doing. You've just got imposter syndrome. What's that? It's when you succeed so much that you can't believe you deserve it. Classic overachiever problem. Caleb laughed. I'm not an overachiever. You found 3 missing race cars and restored them. You built a preservation program from nothing. You changed careers and succeeded. You're raising a kid alone and doing a damn good job. You're absolutely an overachiever. You just don't see it because you're too busy working. Before Caleb could respond, Finn appeared with Avery. Dad, the museum wants to know if they can take our picture in front of the cars for their website. Our picture? Yeah, you and me. They said something about the team that started it all. Caleb looked at Avery, who shrugged. I'd say yes if I were you. Kid's got a point. You two did start this. So they stood together in front of P71/E003, father and son, while photographers captured the moment. Finn grinned like this was the best day of his life. Caleb tried not to cry like this might be his. When the exhibition finally closed for the day and the crowds dispersed, the team gathered one last time in the hall. They stood looking at the cars they'd saved, the story they'd told, the legacy they'd preserved. Ray raised a beer someone had smuggled in. To Jonas Mercer, and to everyone who gives a damn about doing things right. To doing things right, they echoed. They drank and talked and laughed, sharing stories about the restorations, about close calls and lucky breaks, and moments when they'd thought it might all fall apart. The bond between them was tangible, the kind that only forms when people work towards something meaningful together. Eventually, people started drifting away, back to their lives, their families, their own projects. Soon it was just Caleb and Finn, standing alone in the exhibition hall. You tired? Caleb asked. Yeah, but the good kind. I know what you mean. They walked toward the exit, but Finn stopped, turning back for one last look at the cars. Dad, are we going to find more? More cars? Yeah. More things that need saving. Caleb thought about the fellowship from Westbridge, about the Kemp Commission still in progress, about the dozen leads he was already investigating, about the fact that there were countless forgotten treasures sitting in barns and junkyards, waiting for someone to recognize their value. Yeah, buddy, we're going to find more. Good. I like helping you save things. They walked out into the evening air. The parking lot was mostly empty now, just a few stragglers taking final photos of the building. Caleb unlocked his truck, the same truck he'd been driving when he bought that first rusted coupe 3 years ago. Can we get dinner? Finn asked. Something good? Not just fast food? Yeah, we can do that. Where do you want to go? Somewhere with steak. We're celebrating. Steak it is. As they drove toward the restaurant, Caleb thought about everything that had changed. 3 years ago, he'd been barely surviving, drowning in debt, stuck in a dead-end job, struggling to give Finn the life he deserved. Now he had meaningful work, financial stability, and a purpose that got him out of bed every morning. None of it had come easy. There had been setbacks and failures and moments when he'd wanted to quit, but he'd pushed through because the alternative, giving up, selling out, taking the easy path, would have meant betraying something fundamental about who he was. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Initial attendance numbers are incredible. Already discussing expansion of the program. You've created something special. Be proud. He was proud. Not in a boastful way, but in the quiet satisfaction of knowing he'd done something that mattered. At the restaurant, they ordered steaks and talked about the day. Finn recounted every conversation he'd had, every person he'd met, every detail he'd noticed. His enthusiasm was infectious. The best part was watching people's faces when they saw the cars, Finn said. Like, they'd walk in expecting just old vehicles, and then they'd read the story and realize it was way more than that. What do you think it is? If it's more than just old cars? Finn thought about that while chewing his steak. It's proof that people can do hard things if they care enough. That's what you always say, right? That caring matters. Yeah, that's what I say. Well, you proved it. You cared about something everyone else thought was garbage, and you turned it into something important. The kid was too smart for his own good, 9 years old and already understanding things most adults missed. You know what's funny? Caleb said. When I bought that first car, people thought I was making a huge mistake. Your neighbor, Ms. Sloan, actually laughed at me. But then she helped you. Yeah, after she realized she was wrong. People can change their minds when they see you're serious about something. Like Mr. Graves? Like Mr. Graves, though that took longer. They finished dinner and drove home through streets that felt familiar and strange at the same time. This was still his neighborhood, his city, his life. But he was different now. The person who'd bought that rusted coupe felt like someone from another lifetime. At home, Finn got ready for bed while Caleb stood in the backyard, looking at the garage where it had all started. The space was empty now. No cars, no projects, just tools and memories. But that felt right somehow. The work had moved on to bigger spaces, bigger opportunities, bigger impact. His phone rang. Helen Mercer. "I know it's late," she said, "but I wanted to thank you again. Today was everything I hoped it would be." "I'm glad. Your father's work deserved this recognition. It wasn't just his work, it was yours too. And your team's. You took my father's legacy and gave it new life. That's not restoration, Caleb. That's resurrection." After they hung up, Caleb stood in the quiet backyard thinking about that word. Resurrection. Bringing something back from the dead. Giving it new purpose, new meaning, new life. That's exactly what he'd done, and what he'd keep doing. Finn called from his bedroom window. "Dad, you coming in?" "Yeah, buddy. Right now." Inside, he tucked Finn into bed the way he had every night since Sarah died. The routine was sacred. Glasses on the nightstand, blanket pulled up, one story if it wasn't a school night. "No story tonight," Finn said. "I'm too tired." "Fair enough. Big day." "Dad?" "Yeah?" "I'm proud of you, like really proud. You're the coolest person I know." Caleb felt his eyes burn. "You're pretty cool yourself, kid." "I know. I get it from you." After Finn was asleep, Caleb sat in his own room, looking at the photo of Sarah on the nightstand. She'd been gone 3 years now, but somehow she felt present in everything he'd accomplished. Her encouragement, her belief in him, her insistence that he was capable of more than he thought, all of it had pushed him toward this moment. "We did it, Sarah," he whispered. "We actually did it." The next morning brought a flood of media coverage. The exhibition was on the front page of the automotive section in multiple newspapers. Online publications ran features. Social media was full of photos and reactions. The documentary trailer was trending. But what struck Caleb most were the messages from regular people. Not collectors or journalists, but folks who'd followed the journey from the beginning. People who'd donated to the crowdfunding campaigns. Teachers who'd shown the restoration updates to their students. Parents who'd brought their kids to see the cars. One email stood out. "Mr. Rowan, I'm a high school dropout who's worked in a warehouse for 20 years. I've always told myself I'm not smart enough to do anything else. But watching you take a $100 wreck and turn it into something meaningful made me think differently. If you can do that, maybe I can do more than I think too. I enrolled in community college last week. Thank you for showing me that it's never too late to try." Caleb read that email 3 times, then forwarded it to his team with a simple note. "This is why we do this." The following weeks brought opportunity after opportunity. Museums wanted to partner. Collectors wanted consultations. Universities wanted to create preservation programs with him as an advisor. The Westbridge Fellowship had opened doors he hadn't known existed. But with opportunity came pressure. Everyone wanted something: his time, his expertise, his name attached to their projects. It was flattering and exhausting. One evening, sitting in his office buried under requests and proposals, Avery stopped by. "You look overwhelmed. That obvious?" "You're literally surrounded by paperwork and making a face like you're drowning." "I don't know how to say no to people. Everything seems important." "Everything is important to someone, but not everything is important to you." She moved some papers and sat on the edge of his desk. "What actually matters to you?" Caleb thought about that. Finding cars that deserve saving, doing the work right, making sure people understand why it matters. Then say yes to things that align with that, and no to everything else. You don't owe everyone your time just because they ask for it. It was simple advice, obvious even, but hearing it from someone he trusted made it real. He started saying no. To projects that were just about money, to partnerships that didn't align with his values, to opportunities that would take him away from the actual work of preservation. And with each no, he felt lighter, more focused, more like himself. By the end of October, he'd settled into a rhythm. He was working on 3 active restorations, the Kemp Commission vehicles, each significant in their own way. He was pursuing leads on 2 potentially important finds, and he was spending time actually being present for Finn, instead of just existing in the same house. Life wasn't perfect. Money was still tighter than he'd like. The work was still demanding. There were still moments of doubt and frustration. But it was his life. Chosen, not settled for. Meaningful, not just endured. In November, the foundation hosted a smaller, private event for everyone who'd been part of the P-71 journey. The team, the donors, the Horizon Racing veterans, the Mercer family. About 200 people gathered in the exhibition hall for an evening of stories and celebration. Caleb stood off to the side, watching people interact with the cars, with each other, with the shared history they'd created together. Michael Patterson found him there. "You look thoughtful. Just thinking about how we got here, how one random decision at a salvage yard turned into all this." "It wasn't random. You saw something worth saving. That's not luck, that's vision." "I don't know about vision. I just knew I couldn't let it be crushed." "Same thing," Michael gestured at the crowd. "You built a community around these cars. That's rare. Most restoration projects are solitary obsessions. You made it something people could be part of." "I didn't do it alone. No one ever does. But you started it. You kept it going when it got hard. That's leadership, whether you call it that or not." Later, during the speeches, Helen Mercer shared something Caleb hadn't heard before. "When my father was in his final years before the Alzheimer's took everything, he told me something I never forgot. He said, 'The work doesn't die when we do. Good work survives. It waits. And if we're lucky, someone comes along who recognizes it and gives it new life.'" He was talking about other engineers, other craftsmen he'd admired. But I think he was talking about his own work too, about hoping that someday someone would recognize what he'd built. She looked at Caleb. "You were that someone, Caleb. You gave my father's work new life. You proved him right about good work surviving. And you did it with integrity and respect and a generosity of spirit that would have made him proud. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you." The applause filled the hall, and Caleb felt tears he didn't try to hide. After the event, as people were leaving, Elliot Graves approached. They hadn't spoken since the donation, just exchanged nods at public events. "Mr. Rowan, might I have a word?" They walked to a quiet corner. "I wanted you to know something," Graves said. "I'm opening my collection to the public, not selling it, but creating a public foundation similar to what you've done here. People should see these cars, not just me." "That's a big change." "You inspired it. Watching what you built made me realize I'd been hoarding history instead of preserving it. There's a difference I didn't understand until I saw your work." "What changed your mind, really?" Graves was quiet for a moment. "I'm 73, I don't have many years left. And I started thinking about what I'd leave behind. A bunch of cars in a warehouse that gets sold off after I die. Or something that actually matters. You showed me there was another option. I'm glad. The cars deserve to be seen." "They do. And maybe I deserve a chance to do one thing right before I'm gone." They shook hands, and for the first time it felt genuine. As winter approached, Caleb found himself reflecting on everything that had changed. 3 years ago, he'd been a different person, broken by loss, stuck in survival mode, unable to see past the next bill. Now he had purpose, community, a future that looked bright instead of bleak. But more than that, he'd learned something fundamental about value, about recognizing worth in things others dismissed, about fighting for preservation when destruction would be easier, about choosing meaning over money, even when the money would solve real problems. He'd learned that good work doesn't go unnoticed forever. It waits for the right person to see it. And he'd learned that being that person, the one who sees potential in the broken, the forgotten, the discarded, was a gift, a responsibility, a calling. On a cold December evening, Caleb and Finn drove past the salvage yard where it had all started. The place had changed ownership, was under new management, but the basic layout was the same. "That's where you found it, right?" Finn asked. "The first car?" "Yeah, back in that corner." "Do you think there's another one here? Another important car?" "Maybe. Probably not. Finding one was rare. Finding 3 was impossible." "But you did it. We did it. Couldn't have done it alone." Finn was quiet for a moment. "When I grow up, I want to find important things too." "You can find whatever you want, buddy. You've got good eyes for seeing value." "I learned from you." They drove home through streets decorated with Christmas lights. The radio playing holiday music neither of them was really listening to. Caleb thought about the year ahead. New projects, new challenges, new opportunities to save things worth saving. It wouldn't be easy. It never was. But easy wasn't the point. The point was doing work that mattered, building something meaningful, leaving the world a little better than he'd found it. That night, after Finn was asleep, Caleb sat in his office looking at photos from the exhibition opening. The cars gleaming under lights, the crowds of people engaged with the story. Finn grinning next to P71/E003, the car that had changed their lives. He thought about Avery's mockery that first day, about how far they'd come from that moment, about how judgment could turn to respect when someone proved themselves through action rather than words. He thought about Elliot Graves and the evolution from adversary to unlikely ally, about how people could change when confronted with something that challenged their assumptions. He thought about Jonas Mercer, who died believing his best work had been destroyed, never knowing that it would eventually find the recognition it deserved. And he thought about himself, about the hardware store employee who'd gambled $100 on instinct and ended up reshaping his entire life. The story wasn't over. There would be more cars to find, more restorations to complete, more stories to tell. The work would continue because there was always something worth saving, always someone's legacy waiting to be recognized. But tonight, in this moment, Caleb allowed himself to feel satisfied, to acknowledge that he'd accomplished something significant, that he'd taken a chance and it had paid off in ways he couldn't have imagined. He opened his laptop and started typing an email to the team. "Thank you for making this year incredible. We saved something important together. Let's do it again. Simple, direct, true." He hit send and closed the laptop. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new decisions about what to say yes to and what to decline. But tonight, he was just a guy who'd seen value where others saw trash, who'd fought to preserve it, who'd built a community around the belief that good work deserves recognition. That was enough. More than enough. Outside, snow had started falling, the first of the season. Caleb watched it through the window, thinking about beginnings and endings, about cycles and seasons, about how nothing truly ends. It just transforms into something new. The cars were safe. The stories were told. The legacy was preserved. And somewhere out there in a junkyard or a barn or a forgotten storage unit, another piece of history was waiting for someone to recognize its value. Maybe Caleb would find it. Maybe someone else would. Either way, the work would continue. Because that's what people who care do. They keep looking, keep preserving, keep fighting for the things that matter even when it's hard. Caleb turned off the office light and headed to bed. Tomorrow, Finn had school. He had meetings with potential partners. Life would go on in its beautiful, complicated, messy way. But tonight, in the quiet house with snow falling outside, Caleb Rowan, former retail worker, current preservation specialist, father, friend, and finder of forgotten treasures, slept the deep, dreamless sleep of someone who knew they'd done good work. And in a museum 3 hours away, under carefully calibrated lights, 3 cars that had once been written off as failures stood as monuments to persistence, vision, and the simple truth that value doesn't disappear just because people stop looking for it. It waits. It endures. And eventually, if we're lucky, someone comes along who sees it for what it truly is. If you enjoyed this story, please give the video a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. I read every comment and truly appreciate hearing your opinions. Don't forget to share this video with anyone who enjoys this kind of content and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our next fascinating story. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.